I would like to call to order this meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board. Today is April 10th. It is 4:01 p.m. And Mrs. Kirby, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Dr. Meyer, would you like to start the roll call, please?
Jennifer Peterson.
Pam Kirby.
Denny Brown.
And Bonnie Sneed. The first item on the agenda is the public hearing regarding possible closure of Sierra Vista Academy.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Our presentation will be presented by Dr. Jeff Thomas, our Associate Superintendent, and we're going to talk about where Sierra Vista has been and where we want to take Sierra Vista as we expand the programs at that campus and look to reconfigure that campus.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Good evening, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Peterson, and our guest. I'm going to take a few minutes to go over our recommendation to close Sierra Vista Academy. And I think before we begin the rest of the presentation, the most important information is really on the first slide. Although we are looking to close Sierra Vista Academy, it's important for us to realize that alternative education will be a primary service on behalf of the district. What this is about is not changing the school itself. It's about changing the service model to better meet the needs of our students. SUSD is committed to providing the best services during these challenging times. I think it'll be helpful just to do a quick bit of history on Sierra Vista Academy. The current structure of alternative education opened at the Apache and Paiute sites in 2000. Attendance was reported at ANLC as the school, so they really didn't even start as their own school. They started as a separate. 2001, 2002, alternative education becomes a separate school with its own identity and CTDS number. So this actually is the year that Sierra Vista really became a separate, as it was defined, a standalone school. In 2003, Sierra Vista opened at the current site, which is down on Oak. And between 2003 and 2012, Sierra Vista has served a student population between its current enrollment of 25 students up to its highest enrollment of 130 students in 2009. And the population has varied throughout the years and during the year, up and down, depending upon the students that we have served. Sierra Vista has not made adequate yearly progress since 2009, 2010 in the area of graduation rate. And that's an important piece of the story here. Prior to 2010 and 2011, Sierra Vista accepted students from within and out of the district through open enrollment. And part of our decision making was that the cost to provide the services for open enrollment became exorbitant in terms of trying to maintain and balance the budget. And we wanted to serve students that were in the district first. Analysis of the program cost determined that SVA cost nearly 3 times the cost of service for other regular education programs over the 2010 to 2012 school years. So we saw not only the declining in enrollment, but the cost of the program itself increasing. Based upon the impact of graduation rate, the SVA would never be able to meet the requirements of AYP in the area of graduation rate. The way the formula is designed, it statistically would be impossible. There's just no way that it can do that. And under the Arizona Learns labels, Sierra Vista always has performed at the highest level eligible, which is performing, and that's the small school and alternative school status. So even though, according to the state labels, the school had done as well as it could, by the nature of the formula with the federal AYP formula, there was no way it could make AYP. So at some point, the school would be in corrective action. That would just be inevitable. So really what we're proposing is this, that we take and change the delivery model for alternative education And we go from what is the current general philosophy, which is alternative education as a standalone separate school, to alternative education as a program, servicing students in partnership with home schools, community schools, e-learning, and other programs to provide personalized learning. It becomes, instead of a separate, it becomes a partnership. Here's some of the key components that we believe are part of the benefits to our students. First, that the students would have half-day sessions in alternative ed at the Oak campus for 21st century learning. And that's one of the major proposals of this. We would like to take the campus that's named Sierra Vista currently and change it to the Oak campus for 21st century learning. The half-day sessions would also be paired with a half-day of the students at their home school. So in other words, they may go to a morning session at alternative education and then an afternoon session at their home school, wherever that may be. Students would be considered as students in their home school, so their student registration would be at the home school and no longer would it be at alternative education. And then intervention and support would occur at the Oak campus and at the home campus. Currently, as it is, the only real intervention and support services under alternative ed happen at the separate campus. Some of the other key components. Alternative education would have two primary areas of focus. It would be credit recovery, students who are behind and where they need to be, and then behavior intervention. The courses, instead of being the traditional high school courses where students would take 5, 6, or 7 classes, they would be broken into smaller blocks, into 6-week blocks, and that way the students could focus, achieve success, and have greater opportunity for learning. Other considerations, we would transition all current students and make sure we follow them through graduation. We have students that have been at Sierra Vista 2 and 3 years right now that we have a responsibility to make sure that we finish with them in their current program in some form or another. We're not going to let anything happen to those students. We would continue to provide our bus passes as needed for transportation, which is a practice that we currently do, so we wouldn't change that practice. And we would also have to look at other transportation options as needed, depending upon the nature of the students that could attend the alternative ed and what sessions they would be in. We will also support and expand e-learning as we meet the needs of our students. We believe e-learning is going to be a primary adjunct component to alternative education, and as we've designed e-learning and Scottsdale Online, we're creating the partnerships to help support the needs of the students. So we're really trying to get that laser-like focus. We do not anticipate any changes in the current criteria around discipline, long-term suspension, and expulsion. In other words, we don't think that this will in any way negatively impact what currently is in place now. And then finally, I think part of the story is just to help get a sense of what's happening with the rest of the campus. We have e-learning, which has at the Oak campus, its home base. Right now we have 5 core teachers, and then we have another half dozen almost full-time teachers, and then some partial teachers that in some form or another are based there as their home. Alternative education would be there, including the director, specialist, 5 teachers, and currently we have 25 students, but we expect that to expand, and we would have space for up to 120 students in the 2 sessions, 60 students per session. The Early Childhood Center is currently at Oak. Right now that serves over 80 students, and we look at expanding that. Scottsdale Online would be housed over at Oak, and that's in process of relocation, which means that we would have students that currently are outside of the district that are 100% taking online courses that are new to Scottsdale, that they would be serviced out of this location as well. Homebound services, we have 2 teachers that are there, and then finally language acquisition is on that campus. And at this point, are there any questions? Thank you very much.
Can I have a motion then to approve consideration of closing? Oh, that's okay. Since this is a public hearing, I thought I would get a card if it was. Is there anybody here that wants to speak on behalf of the closing of Sierra Vista? Okay, I didn't have a card, so I didn't think there was, but thank you for. Buddy, can I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that the governing board approve placing the consideration of closing the Sierra Vista Academy for the 2012-2013 school year on the May 8th, 2012 regular board meeting agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's 5-0, so the motion passes. Next item is approval of the agenda. There are a couple changes to the agenda. One of them is to the consent agenda, item 11F, and there will be 2 amendments to that. No, 11D. You're right. Okay, the personnel actions, 11D. So we will pull that for 2 amendments. Are any other changes? Okay. We will also just be changing the order of information discussion items. Item C will come first, and then we'll follow with A and B.
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's 5-0. Okay, student and staff recognition and celebrations.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening we have a whole list of wonderful recognitions that we would like to make for our community. First, our own board member, Mr. Denny Brown, would like to have a recognition regarding an incredible program that has started and just really taking wings in our district, TechLink.
I love talking about TechLink. So to date, I think we have approximately 100 computers out in the community that weren't there before. There's 100 probably families that are now able to connect to schools and classrooms and stuff, and I get really excited about it. And why is that? Well, that's because we have a great team, and a great team of people that are working toward a common goal. And I want to acknowledge Tom Clark, who's the chief technology dude, Steve Schrock, who's I think he's a chief IT dude, Sherry Wright. Now, Sherry Wright's, you know, we think about our administration sitting back in little dark offices doing little dark things and all that stuff, and they do that. But in addition to that, Sherry Wright figured out how we could actually move computers around and make things happen. So I wanted to give special recognition to Sherry Wright wherever she is. In addition, so now there's some place that has to take care of all these computers and move them around and do stuff and make them right, and that's Mr. Nathan Nelson at the Strut program over at Coronado. Great guy. Thank you very much to you and all your students. And in addition, there is, of course, one more person who is part of the past and I think will be part of the future of TechLink, and that's Mary Manross. Just recently, Mary Manross brought TechLink about 70 copies of Microsoft Office Student that I was able to deliver to 14 different schools for whatever they can do with them, and I'm just very excited about that. I've also just been given the news that TechLink, we are able to move forward with the name, and we're looking at nationally recognizing this program, and hopefully we can encourage other districts to use these resources and make it better for our kids. So just for Tom and Steve and Sherry and Nathan and Mary Manross, I want to thank you all, guys.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, we have some great relationships in our community, and Scottsdale Community College is no exception in things that are going on. Dr. Annalee Forlis has a recognition that she would like to make.
All right, I was looking for blue. All right. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson and Sandra. It is with great honor that I recognize Dr. Bill Johnson in his red shirt this evening. We want to recognize Dr. Bill Johnson from Scottsdale Community College. He is a professor who has volunteered more than 5 years with Scottsdale Unified School District in grades K through 12 in the area of STEM education, and for his work with the Scottsdale Boys and Girls Club. Through his efforts, students from Pueblo, Pima, Navajo, ANLC, Kiva, Supai, and Mojave have found the opportunity to discover technology, specifically how robots are designed and programmed and are now used. And I've seen him teach kids math that they didn't even know they were doing math. So he patiently guides young engineers to discover new solutions and build confidence. Most recently, his impact on science education was showcased at the SciTech Expo and at ASTA, which is an Arizona State Science Teacher Association. Dr. Johnson continues to integrate a lot of fun with meaningful learning outcomes for Scottsdale's students and for our teachers alike. Congratulations.
I'd like to say a couple things. First of all, the teachers that I worked with, fantastic. Excuse me, I get emotional about this stuff. The kids, I love working with the kids. I hope in the future, all the kids in the Scottsdale school system get to have some robotics, starting after school, working into the curriculum. I believe that there's only a couple issues that needs to be taken care of. Funding, I know, is a lot of concern, but I believe industry will pay for this because they recognize it. Second thing, I think teachers need to have some training. And this is where I have a request for the board and anybody else that's starting a program. Call us at SCC. We want to train your teachers, okay? This is what we would like to be able to do. And otherwise, board, I hope we have your full support of this program. Anytime you need some help, call me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. We truly appreciate your support of our students and the success that they're seeing in our robotics program. Next, Dr. Forlos is going to recognize some of our Saguaro High School students.
And was John Way able to make it tonight? I know that you had a tentative RSVP. I haven't seen him. Okay. Well, in his absence, I will celebrate him in his absence. So, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson and Sandra, we are very proud of John Way. He is a student at Saguaro High School who won the English-speaking Union Phoenix Regional Shakespeare Competition. He will represent the Phoenix area as a semifinalist at the national competition on April 23rd, which coincidentally is Shakespeare's birthday, at the Lincoln Center in New York City. The English-speaking Union National Shakespeare Competition is a performance-based education program in which high school students read, analyze, perform, and recite Shakespearean monologues and sonnets. Through the program, students develop communication skills and an appreciation of the power of language in literature. The national winner will receive a full tuition scholarship to study acting in England. We really hope that that winner is going to be John. Join me in celebrating him in his absence.
We also are very proud of the accomplishments that some of our athletes have been able to achieve during this last athletic season. We have some state winners. First of all, from Saguaro, Peter Dowds was not going to be able to be here this evening, but he was honorable mention All-State Boys Soccer. And then we do have Ryan Berg. Ryan said he was going to be here. How about Mike Hauser? Striking out. Cliff Marge. They all were honorable mention All-State Boys Basketball. Casey Rarick. No Casey. Second team All-State Girls Basketball. And Kaylee Vasquez. She was honorable mention All-State Girls Basketball. And that's from Chaparral. We have Boston Kimmel. Boston is the recognized as All Arizona Soccer. So congratulations, Boston. Good job. We do have 3 Coronado soccer students that were selected by the Arizona Republic for the All-Arizona High School Boys Soccer Division III team. They are Cesar Cervantes, Jesus Garcia, and Miguel Gonzalez Cano. Again, we're very proud. The Coronado soccer team did a great job. They were so close right down to the end. You guys played your hearts out, and we want to congratulate you for a great season. You guys really did a good job. Next, we have one of our principals, Miss Lisa Friend, who's going to come up and do a recognition.
Good evening, Madam President, Governing Board, members of the board, Dr. Peterson, Sandra. I would like to introduce Alana Rivera and her Better? All right. I'd like to introduce Alana Rivera, a 4th grader at Tanalea, and her teacher, Miss Michelle Piazza. On March 27th, the Centennial Legacy Project of Arizona hosted a luncheon at the Phoenician Restaurant to recognize and honor Arizona's most exceptional women whose vision, leadership, and philanthropy have transformed communities throughout Arizona. Alana was invited to this luncheon. As a part of this recognition, an essay contest was organized and chaired by Dr. Carlene Dawson. Essays were collected from around the state of Arizona and scored on a very challenging rubric. There were 3 categories of winners: an elementary winner, grades 4 through 6, a middle school winner, and a high school winner. Alana Rivera, our 4th grader, was recognized as the winner for the entire state of Arizona as the elementary. Recognition also goes to Michelle Piazza, her teacher, who is one of Tanalea's reading specialists. Absolutely wonderful. Also, our National Board Certified newest employee, but hard work and congratulations, Michelle, for all you've done for this young lady. Thank you. Alana brought with her today a grandmother and her mother and her little sisters, Desiree Parge, if you'd stand in the back, and her little sisters. So, thank you for your recognition of Lana. Yeah.
Finally, Madam President, we have Ms. Janet Blum, who will be doing a recognition this evening.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson, and Sandra Como. 9 students from our district have been accepted to perform at the All-State Festival of Performance, which is an annual event that highlights top student musicians and vocalists throughout the state of Arizona. Students first auction for regional performances and then work very hard to be accepted for the All-State performance. The competition is fierce, and students spend countless hours practicing to achieve exemplary levels of performance. This is a tremendous honor and speaks highly of their dedication and commitment of the students and teachers and their love of performance art. The 2012 Arizona's All-State Festival performance will take place April 26th through 28th at the University of Arizona in Tucson. At this time, I would like to acknowledge the students and ask the following students to step forward. Unfortunately, from Chaparral High School, our teacher, Jennifer Moreau, and student Lucas Hooten could not be here. But we have representatives from Saguaro High School under the direction of the teacher, Eileen Wright. We have Grayson Meadows on violin. Harrison White, who could not be here. Oh, you're here! Yay! So glad you're here. Thank you. Okay. Under vocal music for Saguaro High School, Henry Jetson. Okay, and Ian Allred. Glad that they were chosen as members. From Desert Mountain High School, under the direction of Michelle Irvin, we have Austin Yu, clarinet player. Stephen Holzer, a trumpet player. Kevin Yu on euphonium. And in vocal music, under the direction of Bonnie Bazan, we have Kelsey Ishimatsu Jacobson. I just hope that you get the chance to drive to Tucson to watch the students perform. If you can't, applaud them now.
Congratulations, all of you. It's a great honor to be chosen as the best performing artists in Arizona. So break a leg. Finally, I would like to read a proclamation regarding the Support Staff Week of recognizing our support staff here in Scottsdale School District. Whereas the vision statement of Scottsdale Unified School District states a community that engages, educates, and empowers all to excel. Whereas Scottsdale Unified School District support staff work tirelessly to serve and motivate, and Scottsdale School District support staff are vital contributors in today's team-oriented work environment and are key frontline public relations ambassadors for the district. Scottsdale Unified School District invests in training and development so that support staff will have the best opportunity to excel in 21st century and beyond. And whereas the support of Support Staff Week is to focus attention on the important role support staff play in our country and its future. Now, therefore, on behalf of the governing board, I do hereby proclaim that the week of April 22nd to 28th, 2012 is Support Staff Week, and that April 25th is Administrative Professionals Day in the Scottsdale Unified School District. Thank you. Oh, and then finally, we have a recognition by Mr. Tom Clark regarding one of our finest in our media specialist, and she is extraordinary in technology, Miss Sharon Ewers.
Thank you. Where is Sharon? Thank you, Madam President and members of the board, and Dr. Peterson. While Sharon's coming up, I'd like to ask you to join me tonight in congratulating Sharon on the award she received from ASTE, which is short for the Arizona Technology and Education Alliance. This award is a big deal. Sharon was chosen out of a field of media specialists, librarians from across the state of Arizona, and what they were asking for submissions in the award really epitomizes, I think, what Sharon is and what Sharon represents as a professional. And if you know Sharon at all, you'll recognize some of these traits that I'm going to read that they were seeking for when they're looking for nominations. The annual award goes to an Arizona teacher with a library endorsement who expands the role of the Library Media Center to an area of lifelong learning, demonstrates by daily activities the concept of 21st century learning by using both traditional tools, otherwise known as print, and digital tools. And she also shares knowledge of technology applications with others as a peer and guide. So with that, I'd like to invite some people who are here tonight representing ASTE to come up and present this award to Sharon. We have some very distinguished guests. Dr. Ruth Catalano, Sherry Stafford, and Kathy Poplin are here, and so I'm going to turn the podium over to you all for this award.
And since I got up here first, I get to talk first, and she'll knock me off when I talk too long. For over 25 years, I had the opportunity to supervise librarians. And I retired, and then I had to go back to work because somebody came over here, and I had to go work where he was for 2 years. I may not forgive you for that, but that's okay. I had the privilege of reading some of the applications and of being one of the judges to decide. And as I'm reading Sharon's, I'm going, where was she when I was in charge of libraries? Because she's doing the things that I wanted everybody to do. And so you earned this, and you earned these.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson and Sandra. I'm Kathy Poplin. I'm representing the one of the board members of ASTE. But I'm also, I work at the Arizona Department of Education in Educational Technology. And I was also a reader of your application. And, you know, in these days where so many of our districts have lost their librarians, media specialists, whatever you want to call them, what a breath of fresh air it was to read an application. And to me, the difference between this and the other ones that we had is the national exposure that you brought to our field, the state exposure, and you've gone way outside your school boundaries, and that is absolutely wonderful. She's getting ready tomorrow to represent your district at a national conference, but it's here in Phoenix. It's downtown Phoenix. It's the Mobile Technology Conference, and she and a team of teachers are probably scratching their head and going, why did we do this? But this is so good for their learning. It's great for Arizona. It's great for your school district. And on behalf of ASTE, we have an award for you, which is for the ASTE Librarian Media Specialist, Outstanding Media Specialist of 2012. And I'd like to present this to you. And with that, you also get a free year membership to our organization, and we hope that you will continue to represent us well. And next, I'd like to introduce Sherry Stafford.
I'm just going to support a little bit about what was already said. I met Sharon in a capacity of she took a technology course from me one week when she brought some other teachers from Arcadia High School. And as a former library media specialist myself, you could recognize in the first half an hour with her just her incredible knowledge and her curiosity. And she was just one of those people that I think you just better hold on, because if otherwise she's going to be out of sight and off doing so many things. You just kind of got to hold on and go with her. So congratulations, Sharon. You certainly deserve this.
I do. Thank you all. That was just wonderful. I'm very honored, and I'm so lucky. I have just about the best job in Scottsdale, and we are so fortunate that we have a board and an administration, all of you, that recognize the importance of librarians in 2012 and beyond, because we are the ones who are pushing out there with, I love the traditional technology, also known as print. The combination of print and ebooks, and it's wonderful to work in a district where we are so supported in these explorations and these adventures, because it is an adventure, and I enjoy every day of what I do. So thank you all for your support over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. And next up will be public comments. And before we call people up, I wanted to remind everyone that if you have an item that you wanted to address the board on that is not on the agenda, the blue card had to be filled out, and that's all we have tonight. So apparently we don't have anyone who has requested to speak on an agenda item. That any action taken will be limited to responding to criticism made by those who have addressed the governing board, directing staff to look into the matter, or asking that the matter be put on a future agenda. No other discussion or legal action is allowed. So there are only a couple other things that I'd like to say that the board invites the viewpoints of citizens throughout the district and considers responsible presentation of these viewpoints vital to the efficient operation of the district. The board also recognizes its responsibility for proper governance of the schools and therefore the need to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner. The board therefore establishes some procedures which were listed on the back of the card, and those include filling out the form, and then I will recognize speakers, and will be a time limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, which our vice president will keep track and gently remind you when you're coming close to that time. Personal attacks upon board members, staff personnel, or other persons in attendance or absent by individuals who address the board are not acceptable. Presenters are cautioned that statements or representations concerning others that convey an unjustly unfavorable impression may subject the presenter to civil action. Upon conclusion of open call to the public, individual members of the board may respond to criticism, but otherwise there will be, the board won't take any action on anything that's commented on that's off the agenda. So first I have a card from Holly Benter. Hi.
I want to thank you in advance for your time. I'm here to speak about the cell tower that went up on the Copper Ridge campus.
Please speak into the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm the health concerns of the cell tower that went up on our children's school, which is Copper Ridge. I'd like to also say that it is not near our children's school. It is not on a far out spot on the baseball field. It is directly up against the school. We did sit and listen yesterday to Sprint's analyst who assured us that this radiation is safe and will not affect our children. And I'm sure you know that for every study that they have, we have a study that states differently. I could go through them, there are pages and pages, but I know our time is limited. I'm just going to say that on May 31st, 2011, the World Health Organization classified cell tower radiation as a Class 2B carcinogen, putting it in the same category as lead and DDT. 2 weeks later, Scottsdale Unified School District signed a contract with Sprint. Clearly, there is no way to know if there is a danger. There are countries that believe there is a danger and they are not permitting cell towers near schools. There are cities such as Los Angeles that are not permitting cell towers within 1,000 feet of schools because it is still unknown and the risk is just not worth it. And my question is to the board, when you consider this, and I do thank you for halting construction while you do consider it, but when you do consider it, I want to know if you're willing to swear on our children's lives that this is wrong and Sprint's data is correct. I'm not willing to take that risk. I don't want every time my daughter comes home with a headache or a stomach ache or dizzy, I think, is it that tower? Is something making her sick? I know when I was growing up, it was asbestos, it was lead, it was these things we didn't know about that we think back now and say how that was in our schools. 20 years ago, you could drive around without a seatbelt. We didn't think much of it. 10 years ago, you could smoke in a restaurant right next to somebody. Not much farther than that, you could smoke on an airplane next to somebody. And I think we all look back and say, can you believe we drove without seatbelts? Or we let people smoke right next to us? And I just don't want to say 20 years from now, do you believe we allowed our children to go to a school with a cell tower right up against the wall? That's all I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Brian Hampton.
Good evening, Board. My name is Brian Hampton, just a concerned parent. First of all, thank you for your service. I mean, trying to get out of work to come here on time was certainly a challenge for myself. I'd like to address two things. First of all, health, and second of all, education, which is what you guys, your job is actually deemed to do here. First of all, health, I'm going to tell you a story. In 1987, there were several kids at Scottsdale High School. Athletics for many years, we drank out of an irrigation pipe. All right, some of those kids came down with different complications to them with testicular cancer. At that time, there was actually a lot of research. Some said, hey, nope, not a problem, not a problem. My doctor and several other doctors had different research that said there was a problem. Fortunately, one of those two students is standing in front of you today. That's me, Brian Hampton. Unfortunately, one of those students isn't. His name is Ed. That research meant a lot to Ed. It meant a lot to me because Ed saved my life too. Like was just said, I'm not willing to put my 6-year-old, he just turned 6, my 7-year-old's life on simple research that could go either way. That's my first story, and it's about health. You can't stand in front of me and say that there is no risk. You absolutely cannot. Second story, because that's the only way I can actually talk because I'm not a professional speaker, is the story I had with my 7-year-old, pretty smart little first grader, whose desk is approximately 50 feet from this pole, whose brother's desk is about 30 feet from this pole. Bryce knows two things. His dad had cancer twice. He also knows he just lost his grandfather to cancer. Cancer is a very scary word, and we've all been touched by it here. And we all have the same stories I'm talking about right now. But what was done wrong was the communication to all stakeholders. There were notices sent out to people that were within 1,000 feet of this pole, which ended up probably to be about 4 households. The stakeholders, which are the parents of these children, were not properly notified. What resulted in that miscommunication is a lot of communication going out to the public and a lot of things said, where you now have 1,200 students at Copper Ridge High School looking up at a pole and thinking about one thing, cancer. And I guarantee if I go across this board, you have a story about cancer. And if your children knew that that pole represented cancer, it would affect one thing that you guys need to do here, and that is to educate our children. Bryce has a dream to go to Harvard University. He's not going to get there without an education, because it's certainly not going to help my pocketbook by any chance. But he is not going to get there without your education. Right now, Bryce has turned to me and said, Dad, why do I have to go to school? Because that thing's going to give me cancer. That thing is sticking up 70 feet in the air, is a detriment to my child's education, and that's your guys' job, is to educate my children. If this would have been communicated properly to all stakeholders, we may have avoided this type of situation. One of my biggest concerns is my kids' education and 1,200 kids' education. You're standing in the way of it currently right now. You have the opportunity to take down this pole. Even if it's non-functioning, it's a distraction to 1,200 kids' education, which you guys are deemed to do. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next, Scott Mason. Or Manson.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you for giving us this time to speak. I am also speaking about the cell phone tower that was constructed at Copper Ridge. Really, again, a lot of people have a lot of strong opinions about this and different feelings about it. I really see it, really 3 things that I would like the board, to be aware of, again, and look at this issue further and study it and consider what the best options and the best course of action would be. Number one, again, and what's been said previously and can be said better by others and people that have more experience in this field, I really think it's an issue of safety, again, with respect to the kids' safety and well-being. There certainly is resources are an issue with all of us and budgets, and there certainly is a financial component to this, but I think it's very, very small and pales really in any comparison with respect to the kids' safety issue. I think the second thing that I'd like you to be aware of is that since this issue kind of has arose over the last week, there have been a significant amount of parents, their family members, and people in the community up there in DC Ranch that have been very concerned about this issue. They're talking about it. There's been an online petition. There's been written petitions. I think there are hundreds and hundreds of parents that are concerned about this issue, and that I'm certainly couldn't be here tonight for various reasons, but it's very important to all of them. I think the third thing I'd like you to be aware of, I think all those parents, those people are resolved and motivated to get this issue resolved one way or the other. I mean, I don't think it's going away. When they have to drive their kids every day to school, and if any of you have been up there since the tower was erected, it's right there when you drive up and the parent drop off and pick up. I don't think it's something that's going to go away as if it was something buried in the ground or anything like that. So I really, again, I think it's a kid safety issue. I think there's a significant amount of people that are concerned about it, and again, I think that the issue is not going to go away. And you know, somebody told me a long time ago, don't just come to somebody with a problem and just put it on your doorstep and deal with it. I think that I think there are a lot of options and there are a lot of solutions, you know, that can be available. You know, I certainly think that maybe there's some other areas in that area that are available. I don't know what other schools have done on it, other states have done on the issue. You know, it's possible that Sprint would want to change the site. I'm sure in doing the due diligence and research they did for erecting that cell tower, they looked at a number of locations in that North Scottsdale area, and like to know what those are, and maybe they could provide a list of that information. You know, going forward, again, I think there's just a lot of options. I would be happy to be a part of that, again, and moving forward. You know, in sitting here, it's the Scottsdale Unified School District, and I think that that's a great word, and it's italicized, and it stands out in what our district stands for. And I think, again, how the process of how this happened, it's really, you don't have parents, the PTO, and the members of the community and the board, I don't think really on the same page. I don't think it's unified, and I think we can get on that page, but I just think there's a number of things we need to do to get there. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dana Scheibel.
Thank you for your time and listening to all the Copper Ridge parents. We truly appreciate it. And I want to talk about the process of which this has come to light. And it's very clear that had the communication been handled in a transparent manner regarding the cell phone tower at Copper Ridge, the events of the past couple days would have never occurred, and we would not be standing before you here tonight. The school has never exhibited an inability to communicate events or projects where they wanted or needed support from the parents and community. However, in this instance, it is clear that alerting the whole community was not what the school and district wished to do. In fact, the minimal communication that was even put forth was extremely vague. To say perhaps the district was unaware that this may be an issue and the outcry that would follow was perhaps unexpected is most likely false, as the same controversy was addressed in February 2006 when a cell phone tower was supposed to be built at Cherokee, and Dr. Peterson was the chief of facilities, decided that the parents were so outraged that the decision to build it was the incorrect one and it was never built. At what point was the average Copper Ridge parent supposed to be aware when the method of communication was the following? And this was, we received this from the city of Scottsdale. On April 4th, the Sprint consultant mails out project notifications to property owners within 750 feet of the subject site. The Sprint representative who was there yesterday claims that there is no home within the 750 feet of the subject site, so they went 750 feet from the property line. She showed us a map in which 4 homes were highlighted. On April 4th, Copper Ridge also placed a very small notification on the school website. On April 18th, the Sprint consultant submitted to the Developmental Review Board. On April 20th, the city mails out project notification postcards to property owners within 750 feet, of which there was none. June 7th, the Developmental Review Board public hearing notice was placed on the school property near the entrance off of Thompson Peak. We were all on summer break, and no one was at the school. On June 16th, the Developmental Review Board approved the application, and on March 21st, a flyer was sent out to the parents at Copper Ridge saying there would be construction going on the back side of the campus. It was a cell phone tower, which we knew. However, it was never stated where. The next day we arrived at school and we saw where it was to be put. Clearly, the decision makers chose the least transparent path to transmitting the information to our community. As we stand here today and review how the whole thing has transpired, we are only left with one conclusion, and that is that you chose not to inform us, and we feel deceived. This all could have been avoided by a simple measure to involve the parents in this important decision, and it was chosen not to do so. I think that this was perhaps carefully planned, but what was not planned was our response, which has been greatly underestimated. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last card I have is for Kurt Bladorn.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I'm here tonight as a concerned parent. My name is Kurt Bladorn. For the record, I'd like to state that there are approximately 600
Mr. Bladorn, I'm sorry, can you please talk into the microphone because this is being recorded and they can't pick up your
My
comments.
handicap is my height.
I hear.
Does this come on? Okay, well, I'll do my best.
Sorry.
I'll hunch. For the record, I'd like to state that there are approximately 600 parents at the Copper Ridge School. And about 1,200 students. For the record, I'd like to state that within 14 hours of the vast majority of the parents learning of the tower for the first time, after Good Friday weekend, learned that there was a tower up, and within that time frame, we put up an online petition, we passed around a paper petition, and we started a Facebook page. At that time, as we stand here now, actually, there are close to 500 people that have signed that online petition. 150 have signed the paper petition, and there are approximately 68 people that have liked the Facebook page. Doing the math and considering that, you know, if you flatten out the numbers, there may be some duplication, but not much. But when you compare it against the 600 parent number and the 706 total marks or signatures that we've received, I think you get the idea. And the people that have spoken before me have certainly highlighted that this is a cornerstone issue that has gotten the attention to parents. And as we all know, politics is local. And when you talk about children, I'm sure we all know, and I understand preaching to the choir about this, it is about the best interest of our children. It is not about the parents, it is about the children, and I think we all know that. To me, on a personal level, there's a couple things that stand out. To me, there is, you know, when we were at the meeting yesterday, you know, I stood up and I spoke about it being a business decision that was made by the board. And as a business person, when you look at how a business decision is made and the factors you take into consideration, it comes down to money. Thank you, sir. I felt that it was not a good business decision when you look at the numbers annualized, what the city is actually being paid by the corporation. And when you look at the perception, and I say this with a great deal of respect, the perception is that a public entity has been co-opted by a private entity at the risk of a nominal amount of money per year, which barely seems like it's worthwhile. And to me, again, it's a trust issue. I trust the school. I'm a single parent, but I trust the school to look after my child when I'm not there. And when I'm not there, or when I pick up my child, I see gates at the front of that school and I see gates at the back of that school. To me, when I drive up to that school, those gates don't mean anything. Because in my opinion, that piece of technology that's sitting within the school grounds directly over the playground, to me, is affecting them from the inside out, meaning their health. So what good does a gate do to me in terms of their safety? And I'll sum up in a couple seconds, if I may. Thank you very much. So the perception is something that we all have to deal with. And I think the most important thing we can do is when you go back and consider these opinions is look at what the best interest of the children are. And I believe that you may have a little bit of work to do to gain our trust back. As a parent, I certainly do. I respect the educators in the school a great deal. But you have a lot of work to do, I think, to gain my trust back. And there have been parents that have already gotten beyond that stage and pulled their kids out of school. That's extremely sad. And my daughter is here tonight, and I don't want to do that to her. So it means a lot to me if you can go back and factor this in and make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank our speakers for being thoughtful and respectful, and I would invite you to stay and for the rest of the meeting and find out a lot of the good things that are happening here. The next thing that, the amendment? Okay, we will look at the amendments to the consent agenda. The first amendment is that we are going to repost the Cheyenne principal position. So I want to take that off. Can I have a motion?
Usually, I
I'm sorry?
thought we'd do the consent agenda, like you say what all the amendments are, and then
Okay.
we approve the consent agenda as amended. Is that correct, Sandra?
Okay, so just say them, we don't have to do it separately.
Yep, if that helps.
Okay, yeah, it does a lot, thank you. Okay, so I'm asking for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the changes that, let's see, that the Cheyenne principal position will be reposted and continue with the hiring process, and also with the retirement of Wendy Cohen. Can I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda with the amendments to item
D.
11D.
11D. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Madam President, with the approval of the consent agenda and the amended items, first and foremost, I would like to recognize Miss Wendy Cohen for her wonderful service that she's given our community, the Yavapai Elementary School and the Yavapai community. She's done a tremendous job. She's been a Rodale principal, and we are doggone proud of her. So we're going to say, Wendy, it's been a great ride, and we're going to hope to keep seeing you around. So we want to recognize Wendy for her service. And along with that, you have approved the transfer request of a new principal for Yavapai that Wendy would like to recognize.
Oh, there she is.
You know, of course, I have very mixed emotions, but I'm so thrilled to turn over my keys, because they weigh 8 pounds, to Yavapai's new principal, Nancy Hudson. For Nancy and I, this is a wonderful occasion. These are the symbolic keys, and you might notice the sign says "Welcome Home," because Nancy is part of Yavapai. And my staff is here. A lot of them were able to come tonight to welcome Nancy back to her home, Yavapai. We also have cake in the back, and because we always eat at Yavapai. So we're going to cut it up. We'll be happy to serve our board and Dr. Peterson and Sandra. And I'm sorry I didn't introduce Madam President. I'm just too flustered. And we're going to cut cake for everybody who's here, and it'll be in the back. And if you celebrate Passover, yes, there's flour in it. Sorry. So That being said, I want to thank you for your kind words. Love the district. Hope to be part of it still. And I'm looking forward to the wonderful, wonderful things that Nancy's going to bring with our assistant Christy Bro as administrators at Yavapai. Thank you, everybody.
I'll just say a quick couple words. It's truly an honor to be part of the Yavapai staff. All I can say is I'm taking on a tough act trying to follow Wendy Cohen. So anyway, thanks Wendy and Yavapai staff for your support, and thank you everybody else, board, Dr. Peterson, Sandra. It's quite an honor. Thanks.
Yep, all in one. Okay, thank you. Okay, as we discussed earlier, we're going to the first information discussion item will be the presentation on Scottsdale e-learning and Scottsdale online.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Dr. Anne-Marie Wolseley and Mr. Chris Thuman are going to come up and present on our initiatives that we're doing. They are really doing great work, and things are taking off on our Scottsdale e-learning and Soul.
Yeah, get me fired up. Sounds good. All right, good evening. Good evening, Madam President Sneed, members of the governing board, Dr. Peterson and Sandra. Chris and I are absolutely thrilled to be here tonight to share with you a snapshot of, can't get that word out, of e-learning and Soul and also our future expansion plans. We are inspired and energized each and every day in our new roles as a part of digital learning as we navigate through that, and it's such an explosive type of experience of the digital learning world. We've created our own online community, and we define that online community as e-learning, Soul, and then alternative ed. So e-learning defined as students within the Scottsdale Unified School District, and Soul with students outside of the school district, and then alternative learning, meaning credit recovery. So we hope this plan will be able to reach our various learners and our various needs. We also have the opportunity to use our resources together with Soul and e-learning and alternative ed, meaning that we share that guaranteed, viable, rich, rigorous curriculum, and also our highly qualified online teachers. This quote resonates with us. If we teach today as we taught yesterday, we rob our children of tomorrow. Our as we know, digital technology has transformed the way we live, the way we work, and the way we play. In education, digital technology seems to be like a last frontier, where the norm is still classroom lectures and textbooks, and of course we're moving away from that. We have found digital learning to be very student-centered and helps us to prepare our students for those 21st century skills that they need. I'm not going to read these to you, but these are testimonials from our online teachers. What resonates as you read these testimonials is student-centered, one-on-one instruction. Never was able to differentiate this much before. So we have 5 online lead teachers that have been doing this for a year, and they have said that they have felt they have made such a difference being an online teacher. So that's great information to have. As far as updates on the e-learning program, approximately 2,000 courses have been taken by SUSD students in the 2001-2002 12 school year. So that's this school year. And out of 31 courses, we had 1,435 students take at least one online class. Now we hope to increase that in the future. We currently have 17 highly qualified teachers. Again, 5 of those are full-time online teachers in the core subject areas. And in order to able to manage our growth effectively, we plan to train more online highly qualified teachers with using are the resources of our lead online teachers. And Chris is going to talk about that in a little bit. Enrollment by course. The summary or the highest enrollment of our online courses has to do with our 3 core areas: English, social studies, and math. English being 458 students have taken English, 438 with social studies, math is 436. And then if you look at our lower enrollment numbers, that would be the elective classes with 210, science with 180. And remember, those aren't lab sciences, and Chris may talk a little bit about that, in that we're establishing those lab classes that are that can be used for college entrance. And PE is also lower in numbers with 152 and Spanish with 121. Chris is going to go ahead and talk about SOL and also increased course offerings.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President, governing board members, Dr. Peterson and Sandra. As Anne Marie was saying about the expansion of courses and as we grow SOL, looking at this year's numbers, the majority of our enrollment is in those core areas, which is, if you remember from last summer, that was what we started with when we brought this program in April, got it rolling through summer school and really got teachers trained and learned how to use it. And then in the fall, that was the core classes that we had reviewed with our curriculum specialists, focused on to get going. And as the year's gone on, we've been working with Karen Benson, her team, and increasing the offerings, more electives, more more choices for students as we go. So looking ahead to next year, as we've worked all spring, and as we're going to continue to work this summer, we can look at, we're going to more than double our offerings for our for students across Arizona. SOL being students anywhere in the state, the e-learning being students of our own. Looking at bringing in the AP courses, which we'll have available starting this fall, and especially if you notice the world languages on the right-hand side, the Mandarin, the Latin, the CTE offerings with some of the green technology and programming and other courses right now that we've been going through, and we have teachers ready and available to teach. Right now, actually, as you'll see in the next slide, as I go on talking about the SOL update, we currently have 10 students from across Arizona who are full-time enrolled with Scottsdale as virtual students. Some of those offerings that you just saw, the expansion offerings, we will offer. I mean, they're available now if we need them. We have teachers available. We have training set up to get more teachers trained and available. But as these numbers are starting to grow, we can offer those as we speak now to those students across the state. Internally, we've worked with our building principals, Anne Marie and myself, and the district leadership behind us over here extensively in meetings, to come up with a good model on how to best utilize those new offerings across our district without unbalancing the traditional courses and where teachers currently are and upsetting the chemistry of the schools too much. And we've come up with a really good mechanism of looking at a 3-tiered approach, from brick and mortar classes to the distance learning labs, which we were traditionally using for statistics, Mandarin. I know there's Russian being offered in them there, where Japanese, thank you. And now the next level, which would be e-learning, completely virtual, where we have, like this fall, for instance, at Arcadia, we have 2 students involved in AP Environmental Science. No other schools have distance learning available for it. It needs to be a lab-based science. We can offer 3 e-learning, so students can take that as an e-learning course and do the labs in person with the teacher at the Oak campus, which we'll talk about shortly here. So just a little update on where we're going with that. And right now, Anne Marie and I will keep tossing it back and forth as we talk about our expansion plans and how we're going to grow.
We've spent the last several weeks talking to various stakeholders because we do want to expand the e-learning and SOL program. So we've talked to teachers, students, parents, counselors, central office administrators, and really have listened. We created a SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And based on our findings, we have established a list of opportunities that we would like to focus on so we can build this online learning platform into a world-class program. A couple of the things, and I won't go through all of them, but a couple of the things that we did was streamline the online course process. So from when the student enters the counselor's office to where that student actually starts the class was a 7-step process. And now we have worked again with Tom Clark and the IT department, and we're streamlining that to be a 1-step process through Synergy and be able to have our counselors spend more time what they're good at, and that is serving our students. Also, we want to eliminate the student wait list. We found because of some of these processes that there were students waiting on this infinite list. So we want to make sure that as we streamline the course process, also we need to define what is an online student. What is that? It's not a panacea or a cure-all for all students. We need to define that profile of what students we serve best. We also want to look, we already talked about course offerings, and those are things. And then policies and procedures, we just want to make sure that we are proactive instead of reactive, so we want to define some of those things. We know in even a brick and mortar classroom and also in a virtual classroom that curriculum and instruction are those two important things. The curriculum, which it has to be guaranteed, viable, rigorous curriculum, and also that highly qualified teacher. So in the virtual world, learning is a little bit different. And as we looked at the curriculum, which is a wonderful curriculum from Florida Virtual, we also needed to make sure we had the state standards that we needed. We needed to make sure Common Core is embedded into those curriculum, and we've been collaborating with our lead online teachers, those full-time teachers that I was talking about, as well as Andy and Karen's team with the SUSD curriculum specialist, and making sure that that curriculum is that viable, guaranteed curriculum. Also, for monitoring, assessing instruction, the virtual world looks a little bit different, and we need to look at what does the classroom walkthrough look like? What do we do? So we're looking at ways to where we can measure and monitor and assess that is a good curriculum. And also, we may not need to change our evaluation instruments, but the way we evaluate a virtual classroom will look different. And Chris is going to talk about supporting online learners.
Yes, as online grows and becomes more of a viable option for all of our students, we've got to get better communication out to everyone, working with just the parents and the students, having informational meetings, having orientations for them, via teacher contact. What Anne Marie had said at the beginning about the teachers, the online teachers, were the first thing they'll tell you is the one-on-one contact via text and phone calls or emails or a meeting with their students is so much more and so much more personable and so much more customized to that student now that it's different. It's different for how the teacher views it, but it's also different for what the student should expect coming back on their end, and that's something that the parents and the community members as well as the staff here, and you guys need to understand and start seeing the differences of. We have created an online database, so to speak, of training manuals, and we're continuing to update that. It's been in the last month or so. We just really started putting that together online, where we have PDFs with screenshots and instructions on basic things for students to use, as well as interactive videos and things from Brain Honey and from other districts that we've been able to gather that really walk students through processes and give them help and information using the system. And of course, using the IT department and the help desk, the 484 help number. Students and teachers can call that when there's issues throughout the day. So that communication and that support for the people involved in the program is key to help it grow. As well as being key is what Anne-Marie also mentioned about the viable, highly qualified teachers to have in place. Starting this Thursday, we have trainings that we have set up throughout the spring, and we'll do more in the summer, where our teachers are signing up. Right now, I believe we're at 35 teachers for this Thursday. These are Scottsdale teachers who have indicated what they're highly qualified in, and they are coming to e-learning training to learn how to use the system. Have a mock class set up for themselves. They have mock students where they can go in as a student, do assignments, see what they're seeing on their end, and then turn around, log in as the teacher, and grade the assignments and see what they're seeing on their end and understand how to play around and use the system and get a feel for it. And those are the teachers this summer that we're going to try to get involved in summer school as much as we can with as many sections of students through the e-learning as summer school enrollment grows and as people are coming on board, students are coming on board. As many of those teachers we can involve this summer, then we're sitting here in fall with teachers who have experience, training, and now have the tools at their hand that as this number grows, and in the fall and next school year we're building our own base from within. So I think that's a really good concept and really good program to follow. Involved in that, the next slide here talks about the AP classes. The AP classes in there, College Board approved curriculum. What we need is a AP quality and caliber teacher to do it. We have those. We have those in our schools now. We've put that information out to staff. We've got over 60 respondents coming back of people who are teaching English and stats and environmental science, who are doing those classes now that want to get on board and do it in the virtual world as well. So they are also part of these trainings. So we're building our AP teachers as well as the regular class teachers, all in the same training basis. Everybody's learning the same information, and for us moving forward, because there's a lot of flexibility to help get away from those wait lists and those areas where, well, we just don't have a teacher right now. We'll be able to move forward quickly for students.
And a couple of the last things is we know we need to focus on instructional leadership and being able to empower our school leaders to retool themselves, and also to be able to embrace this digital learning world, and to gain that new knowledge in the digital learning world, to have a common language. There's all kinds of different nomenclature out there that our school leaders need to learn, and to cultivate that leadership so they become instructional leaders and our ambassadors for this digital learning. And wanted to share with you, working with a principal, John Beer at Coronado, and also Carolyn Rep, we are going to begin our first blended learning pilot at Coronado that is going to be focused on those students that are academically behind in both English language arts and or math. And the delivery model is going to be a blended learning model, and blended meaning that there'll be a face-to-face brick and mortar classroom, face-to-face teacher, and there'll be online curriculum, so you'll have that nurturing teacher to be able to inspire that student, to motivate them. And these are students that haven't shown very much success before, and we know success breeds success. So we're hoping, we're calling it e-launch, to launch them into that mode of success, to credit recovery, to catch them up where they need to be so they can graduate on time. Part of the learning model, a part of the management system may be this adaptive technology. Adaptive intelligent technology is where the computer system knows where the student's at, and what they can do is the system jumps backward if they need to remediate. If they already have the concept, it jumps forward, and if they need more time, it vertically gives them more time. So those are kind of some new products that are coming out in the market, some software. It's really awesome. And we just have some plans for increasing communication efforts, both internally and internally. Again, I don't want to read that, but we want to make sure not only internally are we increasing communication, but we want to develop those partnerships. We're working, to work with the Scottsdale Chamber of Commerce, work with the Center of the Future of Arizona, and form an advisory council, so we make sure that we're on the right path to this digital learning world. And we just have our first news insider to share with you. Have to have that, just to show you that we are, I know, just to show that we're excited, we're inspired, and just really anxious to start building this program.
And the last slide before we go to questions is, as Dr. Thomas had touched on this earlier in the SVA presentation, about the repurposing of the SVA campus. Currently, part of that campus, about a third of it is covered for the early childhood campus, Oak, which has about 80, 85 students enrolled, and we're seeing those numbers grow as we look into next year as well. But focusing on e-learning, having as a center the hub for students who are summer school, as well as students from outside the district who are coming in for science labs, coming in to meet teachers, who need to come in and use technological devices they don't have in their area at home or they don't have access to, coming in for mediation to meet with staff, as well as we're going to have our alternative ed focused down there as well, so those students will have their contacts and their credit recovery classes based out of there. So it'll be a very very busy campus with with full utilization. I can promise you that. So, with that being said, any questions?
Peterson?
Thank you. What a great presentation. I have to tell you, both of your enthusiasm, it's so infectious. You get very excited about all of this. Okay, I just want to confirm something. Honors class is an AP that will not be until next fall. So we have no opportunity for this summer, right?
For e-learning for Scottsdale students,
Right.
that's not available to the fall, and that's if their section doesn't make it their campus, or it's a situation that we've got a little matrix that we worked out with the principals and the curriculum committees on how we're going to offer those. They are available currently for SOL students. So if it's a student living in Glendale who wants to take a class here and they don't have AP Psych there, I have an AP Psych teacher who could teach that class tomorrow if that student wants to enroll with us. But that's different than a student staying at Desert Mountain who just doesn't want to go in the AP Psych teacher's room.
Or maybe
So-
they want an enrichment class.
Or-
It's not just they don't want to go.
That's
Maybe
true.
they want to add to their, which is more of my question mark. Okay, so now with that said, I'm glad we've streamlined the process through the counselors with versus the 7 steps. I hope we're continuing to make sure everybody's on the same page, that this isn't for credit recovery. This can be for anything. I don't know that that's being communicated consistently with counselors everywhere. I don't think everybody gets it. There's still a lot of false information.
And we agree with you. And that is one of our focuses, to be able to do that marketing, that promotion, that message that this isn't about just credit recovery. It's important, yes, but also it's another viable alternative for regular ed classes as well as advanced classes. So we're striving to get that message out, and again, we're beginning with some people in the school sites, like our school leaders, our counselors we're meeting with, so we can change that message around to, no, we're the whole package.
Right, perfect. And then my last thing, is there additional support? This feels like it's growing, and I think you guys are right on top of it right now, but is there additional support you need to kind of sustain and manage this growth as it keeps getting it? Bearing in mind we have no money, so go ahead, tell us what you want. It's okay. I'm kidding. Yeah. Yeah, it was your one moment, you missed it.
I'll look over to David. Maybe he's got a magic pot somewhere for us.
No, but seriously, I'm sure no one wants to be foolish here. I mean, this is, of course, going to grow.
Yeah, we actually, before the board meeting, we met with Sherry Salaya in finance, and that's exactly the conversation we're having, is looking at this. Okay, what do we need in August? What are we going to need as it grows through the school year next year? And we got to be more proactive in that side and not just rely on that we're going to find it somewhere as it grows. So we are working on that.
Good.
And I also think it's important where we're taking these online lead teachers and they're becoming the trainers now, and you know, using our own resources, because we do that a lot in our brick and mortar schools.
Right,
you know,
right.
so we need to do that. Think about that in online learning. And I think as we go, like I said, we're kind of a learning community ourselves. So we appreciate your support. So thank you.
We're all kind of growing in this
yes,
together.
we are.
It's a work in progress.
Yes,
so.
it is a work in progress. So thank
All
you
right,
for
well, perfect.
recognizing that.
Thank you for everything.
Mrs. Peterson, I think it's important to recognize a year ago we lost over $1 million on concurrency due to the efforts that you've seen here today. We are no longer losing $1 million on concurrency. So that's helping us also as we move forward.
Good. That's excellent. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Kirby?
Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to ask a follow-up question about the streamlining of enrolling in the process. When did that streamlining occur?
We met 2 weeks ago
Okay.
with the IT department. It is not enacted, you know, it's
Okay.
not completely solidified yet, but we check regularly with Mr. Clark and IT to make sure that they have a solution. It's just not.
That's good. That's actually the right answer, because
is?
as a parent with
Yes.
a daughter who enrolled in an online course, dropped a brick and mortar, went to online at the winter break, it was disastrous. She was actually, we all thought she was enrolled, and 6 to 8 weeks into the program, one of your teachers on this flyer called and said, I don't think your daughter's enrolled. So it was, and the other thing I'll add, and I know that Dr. Meyer will appreciate this, what I love as a parent about the online classes that School Fusion doesn't always deliver is that you can go in at any time and see exactly what the progress
Real
your
time.
child's making and see every single grade they've gotten.
It's real time.
It's real time. It's forced
Nice
real
to
time.
point out.
And
Thank
that's
you.
a very nice
Yeah.
quality of this.
But you will see that change. We're counting on that, Mr. Clark. He nodded.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for your efforts.
Welcome.
Dr. Meyer, did you have a question? I guessed that it was you.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, it's been a journey because I remember when we started talking about online school 5 years ago and online PE and that were going to happen at the state level, and now we're getting to AP courses and all those things. So this is all great for multiple reasons. One, that we're offering it. Two, it's become a very competitive environment out there. There are probably $60 to $80 million in state funding are now going to online schools. So the goal would be to have that come to Scottsdale. And it's an ambitious goal, but I think we can do it. You know, and now we're using our teachers. There's places for kids to go, and basically kids can graduate from anywhere in the state from Scottsdale, and our district is recognized. So if this is a kid who lives in a rural area and wants to go to a competitive college, they can now have Scottsdale's name on their transcript. And show that they've taken an AP course, they've gotten a 5 here in Scottsdale, and that means something. So all that's great. Jennifer asked a question about what if the kid wants to take that. What example it was, and your answer, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, was, well, they can't take it right now. So the question is, why? And it's a two-part question. You know, a lot of our kids, particularly the kids that may want to take some of these AP courses, are taking the courses so they can free up other time in their schedule. So if they're doing that, and we're providing a full course load, are we charging them for that class, and have we determined how much we're going to charge? And why, and the first part of the question is, why aren't they allowed to take the course?
Okay. Let me go back to the first part first, I think. Currently, the courses that we showed, the 31, those are the ones that, yes, they're available now. All of those are. The 63 other courses, all the additional ones that we're working on, some are still getting tweaked right now that we're planning on having available in August. There are majority of them would be available now. For if you're going, and what we're looking at is the difference between a SOL student and an e-learning. A SOL student would be a year-round enrollment. The SOL CTS number, that school actually collects year-round ADM, June and July, which a brick and mortar, Desert Mountain, those don't. So kind of two different classifications of students as well. But wherever I was going with my point here, I don't remember. But the courses that we're not offering to the current students now, we've had some internal discussions amongst all of ourselves, and following the high school planning guide and letting the current processes of where everybody is stay at status quo, and looking at making the changes as needed starting in the fall for our current students was the best option to go with, instead of changing it midstream and all of a sudden in March saying, hey, you know, you can go now. You got another option all of a sudden, and that could really cause a big problem staffing-wise, double staffing, because a lot of issues come up with it. So it's easier to start as a clean break starting in August on our end.
I think I can maybe answer this for you. One thing is that a student does have a choice right now, an SUSD student, to take an honors or AP class in the summer, correct? For summer school. In the fall, we've already worked with our high school principals and the assistant principals for ed services to where we didn't want to compete with ourselves. So what we did was we sat around with all our course request registrations, and we looked at, did this class make in a brick and mortar setting? If it did, good. If I had, let's say, 10 students at Desert Mountain, 5 students at Coronado, maybe 4 more over here at Arcadia. Then we were able to put them in a distance learning environment, whether that be one of our languages or an AP class. And then from there, those onesies and twosies, like you said, that, you know, that didn't make, we were able to therefore offer them, but put them in that online environment for AP or honors. It wasn't the honors that didn't make it, was usually the AP ones. So come in the fall, if there's a conflict, like you said, maybe somebody wants to take more than 6 classes and want to take an AP, they'll be able to take an AP SOL class, but we're one and the same, really. So they'll be able to do that. So we are offering those classes in the fall. Does that make sense? Did that answer that? Will they be charged? I think for a 7th class, they'll be charged. They're charged for 7th classes anyway. Is that correct, Dr. Peterson? Yeah.
Which we should talk about, because I don't know that that'll cover the cost. So there's, and David knows all this, and maybe you do too, but there's a bill moving through, and it's going to the governor to be signed, that will allow every kid in the state to take up to 2 online courses. So we should be preparing to have all those kids, however many, 1.1 million kids, come to our district, because we'll collect that ADM, and we need a rate structure that we have to work on, because you can charge up to, you don't have to charge, but you can, and it's like $458 per semester. So we want to start looking at how we integrate our online courses for our students and for our statewide structure, and how we're going to capitalize on providing these services to kids around the state. And this relates to a conversation we had earlier, but now that you weren't there for. You know, grading and end of course assessment. As more kids take these online courses, my guess is that a large majority of them will all take the same final. And then kids will learn that in algebra online, they had to take this final that met the standards, but in their algebra brick and mortar class, every kid took a different final exam. So I think some of this will actually reverse drive what goes on with assessments in our classrooms, because once kids can take up to 2 courses, kids are smart, and they'll say, oh, I can take either the brick and mortar or the online, and I may learn the same thing, but I may be able to get grade A in this class and grade B in this class. So it will drive changing the way we assess all our kids in our district to a uniform assessment. It may or may not. I don't know. It may.
Big conversations.
And then on the 63 courses that we're going to offer next year, so are those all going to be our teachers that will teach those courses?
That's why we're very busy right now, generating that pool of teachers.
And so how, let's say you've got one, because now you just, the numbers, I have 9 kids enrolled starting for next year, which will probably grow as the word starts to spread that these courses are available for our district. At least we hope that's what happens. So now, say you have 1 kid sign up for AP statistics. How is that going to be handled?
That's going to be handled actually exactly how we're doing it now. Right now, a teacher may have 3 or 4 different courses that they're teaching. So I have a teacher right now teaching psychology, world history, 2nd semester, American USAZ history, 2nd semester, and government. So she's got students in all of those. Her regular load of 30 students is across those 4 courses. Same thing with the AP environmental science that we talked about. I'll have a teacher that's eligible and he's certified to teach that, but he also can do chemistry, biology, and earth science. So I can give him courses in class, a section of 35 kids that is across all those courses. I mean, he's not in the classroom where it's being delivered, so he can work one-on-one with each of those kids, all doing 4 or 5 different topics, and manage his time to how he does the labs for the science aspect. And that's how we get away from, that's how we can actually staff at a little more efficient ratio than we would traditionally. And then the courses that I just flipped back to the slide, the majority of these courses are courses that we currently offer. So we have teachers that already teach these courses. That majority of them, there's only a few that here that I'm still trying to talk somebody into coming over and checking it out. with the exception of a few of the electives down here, which are all basically CTE classes that I've worked with Mitch Simmons on, and that we have staff available who are interested in learning them and being involved with them. The rest of these courses are ones that in one of our high schools at somewhere that we are teaching them. So we have people available that can get on board with this if they want to be.
And I think the important aspect is they know the content, but we want to make sure they understand the online in a two-prong approach, knowing the learning management system to navigate through the Brain Honey is the learning management system we use, and then also how to teach in that online content area.
Mr. Brown? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we're coming close to the time on this one, but go ahead.
I'll be brief. And what's our marketing plan? Short answer.
We have had a lot of meetings with Carla and her staff, and we've gotten some initial marketing that we started about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We have had a few radio spots go out and a few ads in the Air Park News. If you guys didn't see it, but there's been a few other ads that have gone out. We have waited to just kind of touch a few areas. We really want to get good, solid demographic information by area, by zip code, the rural areas of where kids are taking online courses, and where our best target is. So we're not just blanketing the state and spending tens of thousands of dollars sending stuff here or broadcasting areas that we're not going to get our bang for our buck. So we're meeting Thursday. We meet with Carla and her team again, so we're getting pretty close to the point where we can say we have a good game plan of where we want to start with the targeted marketing and really hit it hard right now.
Just one thing that we had talked about Carla and I had talked about at some point was, we have kids from outside of the district showing up at all kinds of events, whether it's our baseball games, our orchestra performances, whatever. In what we should hand out programs to those kids. I mean, they're kids that market these programs directly, so the parents are sitting there, and it's just an easy opportunity. I mean, we know they're high school kids; they're coming to the games, and if the program has the opposing team's players in it, then they'll take it home, and their parents will see it. So it's just
absolutely.
But thank you,
Mr. Brown.
I was just curious, is an online teacher exclusively an online teacher, or do they have to, they'll bop over here for a while, then come to class over here for a while?
Right. Currently, this year we have 4 teachers who are full 1.0. That's our entire course loads online. The other 7 or 8 that we've used are 0.6 Desert Mountain, 0.4 e-learning, or they have a small supplemental because I have a class of 6 or 7 kids. It's not even enough to fund a full 0.2 FTE, but it's enough we can make a supplemental stipend for them, and they cover a course, so those kids get that course. So that's your.
So this has the potential of hiring a lot more teachers.
Yes. Right. Just retooling them for again the learning management system and how to be an online teacher. Absolutely.
And would this stay within the same parameters of teacher to student ratios? I mean, are you limited that way?
For this year, they had lowered the ratios. They looked. This was a meet and confer issue with SCA and Dr. Thomas. I know he was involved in this. They had looked across the board at other districts and what they're using in the ratios. Some are 200 students max, some are 100. So they're all over the place. They are talking about if they need to change it. We had done 125 as being the max course load for an e-learning teacher, and I know there is discussions with SCA right now about if that needs to be adjusted at all, but there is no, at this time right now, we're still at the 125 as a 1.0 teacher.
It's exciting stuff. Great job. Thank you much.
I just had one question. Do we have any out-of-state students that are enrolled in Seoul? Okay, I'm just wondering if that would happen. How would they do AIMS? And how would they?
Students that are enrolled in Seoul.
Yes, we, Dr. Pearson and I have talked. Actually, we just talked Monday morning again about this, and we're exploring the avenues. We're looking at not just out of state, but also international, and having students and having a fee-based type of course where they can get a certificate of completion. Courses on students in rural countries or rural areas across not just the country but across the globe. There is a lot of universities we've found as we did our initial looks in the University of Nebraska, Missouri, Texas. They have very big high school completion programs that then guarantees them enrollment as a freshman into their into the freshman year, basically. So we're looking at how they charge, how they structure them, and try to get something competitive to them, because there isn't a lot of that in this area right now as well.
So the key would be some of those students may not get a, quote, high school diploma, but they would get a certificate of completion.
They would
So-
earn credits.
Yes.
College.
Yes, and so they'd get that certificate of completion, which then would allow them to be able to, like a homeschool student and those types of things, some of them then would be able to go to college.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very exciting stuff going on. That's what I wanted everybody to stay here for. Strategic plan update.
Dr. Thomas will be presenting our current status of the work that's taken place by all of our schools and departments on our strategic plan.
Let's get us here. Update on the strategic plan. All right. Thank you, Madam President, members of the governing board, Dr. Peterson, Sandra, and guest. What's really nice about this is actually 2/3 of my presentation could be done already by having the presentation from Chris and Anne Marie, because much of what they're talking about is really, I think, a great representation of where we are in looking at the components within the strategic plan. So that's just, it's a wonderful example, an exciting opportunity, great team effort. It's really taken off, and I think one of the benefits is when you have the right people in the right spots, good thing happens. We're going to do a quick review of our journey, because a strategic plan isn't something that just happens once and then we let it go. So what we wanted to do is to briefly retrace our steps a little bit, just to kind of remind ourselves where we've been in this journey, in this process, and then where we are today and where we're going to go tomorrow. When Dr. Catalani gave Dr. Forlis the charge of facilitating focus groups, I tagged along to do my bit on that, and the two of us actually conducted 54 focus groups from January and February 2010, which included over 1,800 people. You see the numbers of the community members, the staff members, and the students. It was exciting. We had middle and high school students as well, and we did the focus groups. So we were able to engage with lots of people around what they thought was important. We asked them a series of questions. We asked them first, what should SUSD not be willing to compromise? We talked about high standards, program and services, class sizes, highly qualified teachers, school safety. These are the top items they identified. We asked them a follow-up question. What would make SUSD the best school district in the world? High standards, small class sizes, highly qualified teachers. Again, you're going to see consistent themes. We asked them what are the top 3 things that SUSD is doing to help us get there. And classroom technology. This was just after passing the capital override and seeing the significant infusion of technology in our classrooms. Listening to our constituents, again telling us how appreciative they were of us asking and getting that community input. Highly qualified teachers, program services, and professional development. Then we asked a couple of other questions. What are the top 3 things that are currently getting in the way of our getting there? And throughout the entire process, the state budget funding obviously was a key barrier. Testing was a concern, resource allocation, student-teacher ratio, and then interestingly that item seniority versus quality, which was one that showed up quite frankly pretty highly within our student population. And since then we've had legislation that's caused that to be changed. Then we asked what are the top 3 things we should be doing that we may not be doing that will help us get there. This is in essence the wish list, where we should go next. Conversation around mission and branding, and again you've seen lots of work and activity to focus on that. Communication, lots of support around communication, best practices, and innovation. And I think throughout this process we've been doing much of what the community has said we should be doing. Then in the fall of 2010, Steve Kapobris facilitated the strategic plan writing committee. In that process, we had the following groups represented. Many people in this room were part of that process. And through the next several months in the fall of 2010, we actually wrote which became the strategic plan. That plan was presented for adoption at the February 15th, 2011 governing board meeting. We had the mission, the vision, and the tagline. And the tagline caught immediate fire with just about everybody because it really says what we're doing: engage, educate, and empower every student every day. And our students are beginning to see that in every level in the classroom. We also at that time had the board adopt our values: excellence, collaboration, leadership, character, creativity. We defined these values. Then we defined the strategic areas, and we have 6 of them, and then we have 6 goal statements that go with that. And then we started on the path of implementation. It's one thing to plan, it's another to actually implement, to do. And oftentimes, this is where organizations struggle. They have difficulty. They have great thoughts and ideas around planning, but how do you make things happen? How do you actualize? So during the spring and summer of 2011, we spent a lot of time collectively and within departments doing more around creating the bulk of the implementation plan that goes with the goals. Schools and departments began alignment of work to the strategic plan, the notebooks of evidence. And as an example, Dr. Peterson, in August, at one of his meetings with all administrators, laid the foundation and the groundwork for this is going to be the first step of implementation and how we're going to see where we are. And then in January and February of 2012, the strategic plan notebooks of evidence were reviewed by the learning leadership team. So here's an example of the pile of notebooks. We had about 50 of them turned in by the schools in the various departments. And you should have seen the activity at several of our LLT meetings where we literally would have each of us around the table looking through the notebooks of evidence and pouring through, taking very careful time to see what our schools, what our departments were doing. It was fascinating. But we didn't just review. We actually had a framework of questions, and coming up with the questions took us 2 meetings at LLT to really come to the focus. And the questions are aligned to the 4 questions that we use with our professional learning communities. What information and artifacts do we want to consider that relate to the strategic plan? In other words, what do we want our people to know? How will we determine that the artifacts and evidence are directly related to the strategic plan and support our goals and objectives? How will we know that they know it? What feedback and support will we provide when we identify gaps between what we expect to see and what is submitted in the notebooks of evidence? What do we do if people aren't demonstrating what we think they need to demonstrate in terms of understanding and aligning their work to the strategic plan? And then finally, how will we continue to stretch those who have met or exceeded expectations with information and artifacts as presented in the notebooks of evidence? What do we do with those people who are exceeding, that really are on top of this, that really get the connections and demonstrate that? We need to continue to push them as an organization. So here's another example of the strategic plan of notebook of evidence from one of our departments or schools. And generally, we learned several themes, and we had some ahas. Kind of, we sat there and said, wow, look what we discovered. First of all, schools and departments are focusing on student achievement consistently as evidenced by analysis of data. Several years ago, we couldn't necessarily say this because we did not have evidence that showed that schools really were paying attention to and focusing on student achievement data consistently. Every one of our schools demonstrated and showed that they were doing just that. Most schools and departments have significant examples of excellence, and that excellence stretched across the spectrum, across all the different goals. Schools and departments, leaders learn by reviewing the notebooks and through conversation. So not only did we want to just have the notebooks, but we felt that the process itself was great to organizational learning, to alignment with the strategic plan, to making sure we continue to evolve, grow, and implement. Schools and departments are connecting and understanding the strategic plan and goals. It was really neat to see how people, when they looked at their work, they looked at the evidence, were able to draw direct connections to the goals and to the strategies. And then finally, it's very, very important that we provide the feedback to our leaders. So part of the process was that after we reviewed the notebooks, we would actually write handwritten cards back to our leaders and say, thank you for our opportunity to review the notebook. Here's some feedback we're going to provide you. And they read those cards, and they really appreciated having that information. Here's another example of one of the artifacts within one of our notebooks. We also learned that the process of completing the notebooks itself served as an opportunity for leaders to focus. At the beginning, we had a lot of leaders that were not quite sure what to do. They got this notebook, they had these tabs. Okay, now what do we do? And they ended up going from what could have been here to more narrow here based upon the goals. And it made a lot of sense, and the conversation and the feedback was very, very consistent. And after there was an understanding and experience, a lot of appreciation. You know, thank you. That really helped us as we were looking at our school achievement data, as we were planning for next year. The number of artifacts varied. There was absolutely no correlation between the success of a school or a department and the weight of the notebook. Some were heavier than others. Some were stuffed completely, where we actually had a couple of schools that decided to change out the binders and give us bigger ones. And others were different in terms of their succinctness and the type of information. But more paper absolutely did not have a correlation to whether or not we thought something was successful. Principals and departments had shared that they want more opportunity to share and dialogue regarding implementation of the strategic plan. They want to continue to do more. Again, it's a learning organization. And finally, we believe that great work and achievement is occurring all over the district. It was really impressive what we saw. We have some next steps. First, we will continue to review and share notebooks of evidence between schools, between learning communities. They want to trade. They want to know what School A is doing, School B, compare notes, have conversations. We believe we need to prepare an annual report for the governing board and the community sometime during the summer of 2012. We need to give a status report. Here's where we are today. We need to continue to monitor progress, assess our goals, modify and implement our action plans. That's part of the strategic plan, is a living, breathing document. And we're excited by this, and appreciation to Tom Clark and his staff. Our next reporting will be completely electronic. And when we go back to the board, we will model and demonstrate that to you. Right now, we didn't have the design ready to go yet. We're testing it as we speak. In fact, I just talked to Marty Day today, and she was giving me some feedback around her excitement because it really is going to work. We just have to do a little bit of work on the reporting mechanisms and uploading documents. And then we will continue to provide feedback to the governing board and report back. The next one, we believe, should be scheduled sometime in the fall of 2012. And at this point, are there any questions?
Mrs. Peterson.
Jeff, thank you. This is excellent. With the notebooks, and I realize some were big and some were small and whatever, I remember when we first talked about this, gosh, maybe a year and a half ago, even when Dr. Catalani was here. I know one request the board had, we were hopeful the follow-up would not be laborious or cumbersome for the school sites, because we're very respectful of these administrators and everything they have on their plates.
Correct.
So, okay. Go ahead.
That's an interesting question, Mrs. Peterson. I think at the beginning, and we have some folks in the room, so they might give us some feedback, we had a lot of uncertainty because they saw this binder. It was divided into 6 sections. It had the goals stated in there and the objectives, and I think some of the initial reaction was, oh my gosh, this is burdensome, it's big. I think what we learned, and I can speak at least from my personal experience, as I talked with school leaders and we walked through the process, we were explaining 2 things. First of all, don't wait for this as the completion of a project. Look at this as a constant part of your work. So as you do work in your school or in your department, add to it along the way as you make the connection between your department goals, your school goals. So it was really designed to just kind of consistently, let's provide the feedback. And I think when it was over and done with, and we actually had the first round of notebooks presented, a lot of that worry and concern really did dissipate because there was a connection. Having said that, part of our commitment to streamline and make it as efficient as possible was going to the electronic form. That was one of our responses in the process. And I think we're going to continue to learn and evolve. One of the things that I think collectively as a team we're really proud of is in this process we really have embraced continuous improvement on working on the strategic plan in every aspect. So that first round, getting all that feedback, we had lots of great ideas by that conversation that were really across the spectrum. So I know that's a little bit of a long answer to your question, but I believe as we continue to work on it, we will get better and more efficient in the reporting mechanisms, and yet we're still going to be able to say we're dead on with the focus.
Which I like, and I have to compliment all of you, David, Jeff, Andy, everybody involved in this. Thank you for picking up the baton and continuing with this. I will tell you, I remember being at the focus meeting and a lot of the dialogue like, you know, will this continue? Where's this going? What if we change superintendent? So I suppose this will go, you know. So yay, thank you for realizing this really was important. The second part to that, another thing I remember loud and clear from my focus meetings, the community really wants to hear feedback. They don't want this to be a one-time event, and that was also a concern. Gosh, you drug us all in here, you wanted our opinions, now we'll never hear, hide nor hear from you again. So how are we handling that?
Mrs. Peterson, we agree. And I think now that we have the first quote-unquote full year just underneath our belt with that, part of our reporting and planning for next year should be exactly that, should include our ability and opportunity to loop out with our community and do a status report, get feedback, and make adjustments. And part of why our recommendation is to do an annual report is that will give us a centered document or foundation by which to engage the community. If we try and do that now with all of the information, that's so broad and deep, we're going to have people that are going to be glazed over. So we need to break that down into the summary components of collectively what have we learned during our first year full implementation of the plan, and based upon that, community, tell us what you think.
Perfect.
So that's in line with where we want to go next. And in fact, I've been working with Carla and providing lots of different samples and ideas from what are other districts doing in terms of reporting their annual reports or what they're doing. So we're going to try and create our own and do it in a way that makes sense, that's readable, presentable, and again, it's a foundational document to engage the community.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you to
You're
everyone.
Mrs. Kirby?
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I too, I want to echo Mrs. Peterson's comments. I too remember being in the focus groups and wondering where this is all going to go. And it is very, very nice to be here right now after we've changed superintendents to see that this is still a breathing document. It's still alive. One question I had, though, because this caught my attention as you were going through the presentation, what are the top 3 things that are currently getting in our way of our getting there? And as I looked at that list, I could quickly come to mind various efforts we've put against the items on this list to mitigate these, with the exception of the too much testing. So my question is, in my focus group, and I think we would all agree that that means too much standardized testing, what have we done? What are we planning to do with respect to, if anything, with respect to reducing the amount of standardized testing in the classrooms?
Mrs. Kirby, I think it's a great question, and I'm going to grab Dr. McNeil, because this is right in your wheelhouse. And I do think we have an answer.
Madam President, governing board members, Mrs. Kirby. Standardized testing isn't going away, unfortunately. I'm not a big fan of testing, but we're bound by the powers at be. I would like to say that we can tackle this monster, but unfortunately, I believe standardized testing is here to stay. With the oncoming of the Park assessment and the unknown of what that is really going to look like, it could be even more cumbersome than it is currently now. What we do know currently in the Scottsdale School District, we are bound to the Stanford 10 as well as the Ames test at the end of the year, plus our benchmark assessments in order to predict Ames. I don't see that changing.
Who binds us to the benchmark assessments? Who is the entity that governs that?
Go ahead.
be, would it not be us?
It's a great question.
Great question, Mrs. Kirby. Benchmark testing is specific to Scottsdale School District. The way that we choose to benchmark test our kids is very much specific to our school district. However, we have legislation, Move On When Reading, and legislation SB 1040 that measures teacher effectiveness. And when we measure teacher effectiveness under SB 1040, our benchmarking system is part of that progress monitoring along the way. So our 4 benchmarks in reading, writing, and mathematics, the first assessment and the last assessment measures growth of students from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. The benchmark 1 in November and benchmark 2 in February, are progress monitoring to see, are we on track? One of the reasons that we have high percentage of our kids by grade level and by content that meet and exceed the standards is that our benchmarks are directly aligned to our AIMS performance. So our benchmarks are 4 benchmarks. Well, actually, there's 2. One's a pre-assessment, one's a post. 2 benchmarks in the middle. Those are directly aligned to predict our performance on AIMS. So it is our metric system to say, are we on track for where we're going? So when we look, that's one category. So benchmark testing, your question specifically around who dictates that we do 4 benchmarks in reading, writing, and math in Scottsdale, that's our school district. Then we also take a look at Move On When Reading, and when we move on when reading, we have to have a kindergarten assessment to predict to use as a metric to say, we think based on your child's performance in kindergarten and first grade, second grade, they're not going to make it in third grade. And by the new state statute, House Bill 2732, mandatory retention of that third grader. So we have to have those metrics in place to be able to progress monitor. Then we look at SB 1040, which is legislation from the state that says that our Group B teachers need to have a pre-test and a post-test to measure their effectiveness of student growth in the content areas for which we do not have an AIMS assessment. National assessments from, anyway,
Okay, can I just stop? Thank you for the very detailed response,
Yes.
but I gotta believe we can fix that.
Yeah.
I mean, that is overwhelming
Right.
standardized testing to put our kids through. And the reality is, quite frankly, to say that we have to test our kindergartners to determine if they're gonna read in third grade, really? They're kindergartners. Now, are we testing the kindergartners so that we can measure the teachers for the performance? That's another, yes and yes.
Yes and yes.
So we're testing our kids for the adults.
Well, Senate Bill 1040 has to give teachers credit, if you will, based on growth. That's Senate Bill 1040. That kind of makes me sick to my stomach, but it is what it is. So yes, I will say though, in addressing the testing too much, within the writing component, we have only a beginning and an end, and it is school site decision on how exactly they're going to monitor writing throughout the year. The district has backed off in holding schools accountable with that. The kindergarten assessment that we have, a diagnostic assessment within the kindergarten that teachers are continually doing, we have decreased the size of it because it was so cumbersome. We know that the kindergarten assessment was bigger than it really needed to be. What happened was we were trying to comply to Senate Bill 1040 and we made a beast, if you will. We have reduced the beast to reduce the cumbersome task upon the kindergarten teachers. We brought together the kindergarten teachers to talk about it. They are much happier. I will say with the benchmarking assessments, I think if we polled our surrounding districts, you will find that benchmark assessments twice throughout the year are common practice. So
Yeah, I personally don't disagree with benchmark assessments twice, beginning and the end. I think that's adds quite a bit of value. It's the 2 in between that I'm less. I wonder if it's almost become a crutch.
Yeah, and
for the
Mrs.
school
Kirby,
district.
I would. That's what I was talking to. I think if we polled our surrounding communities, there are 2 in the middle to kind of help those teachers regroup and kind of see, as well as report out to the parents how the students are doing. We have many parents that constantly go on and look at those and say, how are our kids doing? I know as we move forward to our calendar next year, we kind of moved our calendar, our benchmark assessment, so that teachers would have that information to share with the parents. So our conference times will be strategic in when they are, so that the teachers will have back data on those benchmarkings to say to the parents basically how we're doing. So we're trying to be more strategic and make it more valuable rather than just something to do, if you will.
And there's another point about the pre and post assessment for Senate Bill 1040. Our measurement is called of effectiveness of instruction. those were 100 question tests. We have now reduced them to 46 questions. So that we're still testing, but we've cut the size of the test in half. Also, 2 years ago, we also did science benchmarks. We no longer do science benchmarking. We just stick with reading and math and then writing twice a year. So we've reduced the number and the lengthiness of the test. At the same time, accountability measures have placed more assessment on school districts to comply with state legislation.
Wait, and I have to that point, just to add something. I know when Eric and I first came on the board was when Galileo was actually first coming on the scene. One of the issues, there was pre and post testing, but parents and everybody was freaking out. Wow, can't we arrest this in the middle? You know, how do we know what's happening? I know she didn't know it when she started school, and I know she doesn't know it when she ends school. What the heck? Aren't you people monitoring this? So in fairness, that's how the 4 times a year came to be.
Right.
It had to do with state legislation as well as parents were actually wanting.
And Mrs. Kirby.
But now they're saying they don't.
I know, now they're saying
And
no.
Mrs. Kirby, I would say if I was a classroom teacher and 33% of my evaluation is going to be judged on how my kids did at the beginning and the end, I'm going to want to know a couple times during the year how they're doing on a like assessment so that I'm not going to get dinged, if you will, because my kids did not grow enough.
But you're proving that statement just proves my point. We are testing our kids for the benefit of the adults. And I think it's sad, and I think we're doing too much standardized testing, and we're missing the art that the teachers can bring to the classroom because they're teaching to the test.
To that point, I would have to say that as a former classroom teacher, I liked the idea of the benchmark testing because Ames, we don't get the result until the next year. So it was always kind of a surprise 3 months later. Did your kids make it? Did they not? As a classroom teacher, I would want to know what's the percentage of my kids that understand before I go on. And that's the beauty of the benchmark testing is that you get instant results immediately, and you can tell whether they are, and we're going to standards-based anyway. So this way, I can just tell you that from going to a national conference, we are so far ahead, and there are districts that are saying, how can we even comply because we don't know. We don't know until after the kids are already gone whether they learn the material.
But I'll just remind you that the teachers are also administering their tests that aren't standardized tests. And so hopefully those tests are also giving the teachers feedback as to where the kids are, because hopefully they're teaching the standards and those additional tests are testing against what they're teaching. So we are putting tests upon tests upon tests.
And I think as we go to standards-based testing, that will decrease. I mean, there won't be duplication.
So which one decreases? The standardized test becomes the governor.
And Mrs. Kirby, governing board members, I think the challenge is those formative assessments that we're talking about that inform the teachers, the tests that are going on all the time to inform them. A lot of times, unfortunately, those aren't based on the standards and will not tell the story, if you will, about how we're going to do at that assessment at the end of the year, which is our guide in what the instruction looks like within the grade level.
I have another to that point to kind of bring it back around to Mrs. Kirby's point, though, because I do remember from the focus groups, as I'm sure everyone here does, the question mark, yes, too much testing, but as it relates to loss of instructional time. I mean, this week we have Ames, it's a half a day here, a half a day there. That's when it feels like it's getting intrusive. When parents feel like, wow, are we learning or are we just testing every 3 minutes?
And most importantly, what do we do with the data after we benchmark? So if we collect the data, we put it in a file cabinet, and we keep doing what we've always done, that does not benefit student learning. So we take the data, we make informed decisions about what our next moves are, and we have schools with incredibly elaborate plans that have intervention and enrichment schedules based on not just benchmark data, but all their common formative assessments along the way to constantly dipstick to see where their kids are. In our schools that have high growth data, that is a common practice in their schools. So it's not most importantly, it's what do we do with that data? If it's just data to be done with it and to test with it, then we need to rethink the practice.
If I could just make a request, if I could just get a summary of all the standardized testing that we do at the various grade levels. If you ran through it verbally, because you know it, if you could just put that on paper. Thank you.
The testing calendars. Thank you.
and all the new stuff that we'll have to implement next year that we're passing, because we've had bill after bill. And this is a part of a problem that, you know, having the state legislature do what we do, which is small government, intrude in everything, and whether it's education or healthcare, it's painful because to be down there when, you know, in education committee we had, you know, Mr. Crandall, this is Chester Crandall's bill to establish a whole separate evaluation system with separate funding from where we are. I mean, it just is, and another committee to look at testing, and another committee to, and it's nonstop. And until we actually listen to our stakeholders and develop a cohesive system that would limit this type of testing, because it can be done, we're going to continue to have this conversation. It's out of our control.
Well, and let me
So-
add to my request, and you probably were going to do this anyway, but when you do the laundry list, identify is this what need this test is serving. Is it one that we're imposing upon ourselves? Is it the state legislature? Or is it a double dip where it's meeting both
And
objectives?
I'll give you estimated time amounts as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
That would paint a better picture.
And
Thank
one
you,
thing
Ms.
to be mindful of is that with the implementation of the Common Core standards, the park assessment that measures the Common Core in 2014-15 will be administered 4 times a year, beginning in kindergarten to 11th grade.
Which begins the conversation of what happens with districts that currently have benchmarks in place. Will the park and the park will then replace that, which I think everybody's looking in the crystal ball, and if Pearson is the one that's driving that machine, is yes, they will. So you're finding that your companies and your ATIs, if they will, are trying to figure out how they're going to be in the game. So it's going to be an interesting journey.
And beyond that, potentially 2 at the high school and middle school level, 2 courses aren't even going to be potentially given within our district and are out of our control because they'll be online by an online provider. And none of that is being taken, none of the future is being taken into account as we move on when ready, and It's just going to be
and Mrs.
the
Kirby,
Wild West.
and to talk about the secondary piece as well, currently within our 10th grade Ames test, the park is even talking about end of course assessment, to where they would be taking assessments at the end of each course, so now we think about doing one assessment at the high school level, where we would be having assessments going on continually throughout the year. So welcome to the party.
Mr. Brown?
Is there going to be a test on this? First of all, you did say that these notebooks are being shared throughout the different learning communities?
Mr. Brown, yes.
And so the sharing there is huge. Sharing success, sharing failure, whatever the case is. We're going to learn from that, but from community to community. You know,
Absolutely.
Just one little thing, I think it'd be interesting, because times have changed I sat in one of these focus groups. Times have changed. It'd be interesting now to go back in the not too distant future and ask the same questions and see how the responses have changed or not changed. And, that's enough from me.
Mr. Brown, we agree. In fact, part of the early conversation is to do just that, but within the framework of, here's what we've done so far, we ask these questions, now what do you think? So we agree. We think that's a very nice, consistent framework.
I think the most exciting thing about these notebooks of evidence are other principals looked at other people's work and all of a sudden said, I've been wanting to do that. And they went and copied them so they would have templates for themselves to not reinvent the wheel. That's been the most exciting thing for me, because I see other people's work and go, wow, that's what I've been trying to figure out. So we are really helping each other by doing this reporting and then doing the overall reviews. It's been very exciting to see that.
Well, I got to think, too, that this adds to our whole goal of getting grading systems in line across the district, having everybody kind of thinking on the same page, looking at the same things. So it's all good stuff. Thank you very much for all your efforts.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think next we'll look at SUSD, Secondary Math Instructional Materials Adoption.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Benson is going to come up and give us an incredible presentation regarding the work that her teams have been working on as we move forward with our curriculum adoptions and specifically in the math area.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Good evening, Madam President, members of our governing board, Dr. Peterson and Sandra, and all with us this evening, including my mother, who I think is tuning in from 1,000 miles plus north this evening. Tonight, we're happy to have the opportunity to share the ongoing work and recommendations of our high school textbook and instructional materials adoption committee, and highlight a few very important program updates in math that we believe will afford better learning opportunities for our students across Scottsdale. You'll notice that I'm going to use the word "we" frequently during this presentation, as the recommendations and improvements highlighted in this presentation reflect hundreds of hours of collaboration on the part of our department chairs, members of our adoption committees, with our principals, with our curriculum specialists, lead teachers, and with members of our district leadership teams. Before beginning, I'd like to acknowledge the leadership and work of our math curriculum specialist, Kathy Nickel, who is with us here tonight. Kathy, can you wave if you've not met our Kathy, secondary curriculum math specialist extraordinaire, and both Kelly Davis and Judy Lewis, who promised to tune in from home this evening to be with their families. I'd like to recognize and thank Kay Stockley. Kay, could you also wave from the back of the room? Our instructional materials coordinator, for her continued support during our textbook and instructional materials adoptions. And I'd like to extend a very special thanks to our K-8 lead teachers, to those that have served in any capacity on the secondary math adoption committee over the course of the last 3 years, and to our high school department chairs for their commitment to continue to evaluate and recommend the very best resources for our kids and students across Scottsdale. Specifically in this math update tonight, we're going to first provide an update on the math courses we currently have available at the high school level, and then we'll share the materials most recently recommended by our high school adoption committee members as resources for those courses. Next, given the high school trajectory of our courses actually begins in middle school for a number of our students, we'll provide a quick look at the math courses at the middle level, and then we'll share the plans to exchange our current materials for the Common Core editions made available to us at both the middle and elementary levels per the agreements made with Glencoe McGraw-Hill and approved by the board in the spring of 2010. Finally, we'll share important professional development opportunities for our math teachers, highlighting some of these opportunities led by our own curriculum specialists and lead teachers in Scottsdale, and those led by 2 key community partnerships that will provide learning opportunities for our teachers in math as well. And throughout this presentation, we'll try to very briefly provide the historical context of the updates and resources highlighted tonight. So let's get started. You likely remember that as part of the high school planning guide process this fall, we clarified the math trajectory of courses our students can elect to take for high school credit in Scottsdale. And one of the recommendations that our high school planning guide committee made at that time included that we continue to look at what we have available as 4th-year math courses for our students, remembering that courses must be equivalent or beyond Algebra 2 in order to count for a math credit for graduation purposes. As a result, our secondary adoption committee and our department chairs have recommended that we retool our business math course, renaming it financial math, and reshaping the expectations within it to allow it to include more algebra in conjunction with rigorous project-based learning experiences for our students in that course. And we are currently seeking ABOR approval for that course at this time. As many of you likely remember, the work of this secondary math adoption committee actually began in the fall of 2009. When the state released a draft of the Common Core standards in the spring of 2010, the secondary committee agreed to press pause on adopting instructional materials to allow publishers the time to respond and develop products that would reflect the new standards. During the 2010-11 school year then, the secondary committee reconvened and recommended materials for the courses listed at the top of this slide, and the board approved those recommendations last spring. But again, at that time, after looking at materials from publishers, the committee elected to refrain from adopting materials for the secondary math courses that would most be impacted by the Common Core state standards, and we paused on future 4th-year math courses and resources for those courses last year as well. This year, members of what we might consider the longest-running adoption committee in SUSD history reconvened once again
And after thoughtfully considering the resources submitted by vendors, they have recommended the materials listed on the next slide for your consideration and approval this spring. Included on the spreadsheet that was sent to you in your packets, I think I can pop it a little bit bigger here too. In pale pink are the materials recommended by the Math Adoption Committee this year. You'll notice these recommendations include resources for Algebra 1, for Geometry, and for the new financial math course proposed as a fourth-year math course in Scottsdale. You'll also notice that the committee is not recommending what we might consider typical materials for our Algebra 2 courses at this time. Instead, with the support of our department chairs, the committee is recommending that we encourage all Algebra 2 teachers to join the Pathways Partnership at ASU, and that we use those materials in our Algebra 2 course. We continue to hear from our SUSD teachers that have previously participated in this partnership that the Pathways materials are of the highest quality, and the learning that occurs as teachers participate in Pathways is the best professional development opportunities specific to math. I'm very happy to report that at this time, Kathy has generated an awful lot of enthusiasm for this Pathways partnership, and we have over 80% of our algebra teachers already planning to participate in this partnership next year. That's significant. One item you do not see on the spreadsheet is the previously heavily requested Geometry Sketchpad program, and this is because some of our superstar teachers have taken up our challenge to continue to look for and share open source materials available to our teachers and kids at no cost. As a result, one of our teachers at Chaparral has found a similar product from Europe called GeoGebra that provides our kids and teachers with a like tool for free. This one open source resource saves our district thousands of dollars, and for that, that teacher and our Kathy have earned dinner on me. The benefits of adopting the materials recommended by our secondary adoption committee this year are significant, in that our Algebra 1 and Geometry teachers and students will have access to materials aligned to the Common Core state standards and to online resources, including an exam generator, for the very first time. This means that teachers of these courses will have access to all supplementary resources, including the practice pages online. And those resources are completely editable, which means it allows our teachers an easier means of differentiating resources for our kids in those courses. We believe the decision to purchase Pathways materials for our Algebra 2 students and the financial algebra book that we have proposed on the spreadsheet tonight as a resource for that financial math course. Those decisions afford our students with the best resources available to support the thinking expected in those courses at this time. Relatedly, a recommendation that impacts our high school includes the resources we want or intend to provide to our teachers for our support courses in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. You might remember that last fall, the High School Planning Guide Committee proposed to eliminate Algebra 1 Basics and Geometry Basics and Algebra 2 Basics. The rationale for that decision included that basic courses do not meet requirements for high school graduation and are not accepted by colleges. At that time, the High School Planning Guide Committee recommended that we consider a menu of opportunities for students to receive support to ensure their success in those three courses, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Thus, after many conversations with our department chairs and with members of our leadership teams across Scottsdale, we will be offering a menu of choices of support next year to provide our students the opportunity to be successful in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, and to allow students the choice to maintain their participation in other electives in their class schedule. Thus, the three support options students can elect to participate in beginning next year will include a full class period of math support during the day, offered as an elective credit, which we have now at some of our campuses, an online support course as an elective credit, taken concurrently with the class, either on campus or off, and an online support class students can take in the summer before the class as an elective credit. And as a reminder, some sites provide additional supports, including free tutorial sessions offered before and after school, as well as at lunch. And some sites offer specific intervention or support programs during the summer, and those forms of support will continue. Recognizing that some of our students actually begin taking math for high school credit at the middle school, we wanted to share that teachers and members of district leadership teams, middle school principals, have met this year and simplified the course sequence at the middle level a bit, and we've created better processes to determine the best placement of our kids in middle level math courses coming out of 5th grade. We also believe that this process improvement that we're talking about identifies students that are most likely to benefit by taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade across all schools in Scottsdale. To remind all of the historical context about the materials at our middle and elementary levels, we proceeded with the math adoption at grades K-8 during the 29-10 school year with an agreement with McGraw-Hill that they would exchange the books we were purchasing as soon as they had finished creating their new product with the Common Core standards at no additional cost. This evening, I'm very happy to report that a committee of 6th through 8 teachers representing SUSD middle level schools has reviewed and unanimously recommended the exchange of the current 2009 copyright materials for the Glencoe McGraw-Hill Common Core editions at grades 6-8. Applause, yay. This exchange of materials, already approved by the board in 2009-10, benefits students and teachers in a variety of ways. And I won't read all of the benefits, but I did want to highlight that in addition to providing a better resource to promote a deep conceptual understanding of the math domains across all of our grade levels, this exchange of materials allows every student to have their own consumable textbook at grades 6 through 8 each year. And consistent with our efforts to encourage more students to take Algebra 1 successfully in the 8th grade, the consumable text works in our favor, and that we have the flexibility to negotiate the number of texts we need in each course each year over the course of this adoption agreement with our company. That's significant. If we had gone with a different kind of text, we would have to negotiate that differently as we have movement to increase the enrollment in Algebra 1 at 8th grade. We had the same agreement with McGraw-Hill at grades K-5 in that the company would exchange out the books that we'd purchased in 2009-10 with their new materials free of charge once the additions with the Common Core standards were ready. And again, I'm happy to report that in March of this year, our elementary committee group of teachers unanimously recommended the exchange of the current 2009 Copyright Math Connects for the new materials called My Math. That's the company's instructional material program developed to teach the Common Core state standards and the mathematical practices within them. Originally, we had planned to exchange out the materials at the elementary level in conjunction with the rollout plans from the ADE for the Common Core state standards. And that would have meant that we would have waited one more year before exchanging the materials at grades 3-5, because we're rolling them out a couple domains per year. However, based on the enthusiasm of our teachers on this committee about the quality of the resources and the new materials, the committee unanimously recommended that all teachers have access to the My Math instructional materials next year. Thus, all of our K-8 teachers will be asked to turn in their Math Connects and Glencoe editions to their APs in late May, so that the exchange of materials can occur prior to the start of the 2012-13 school year. We'll be communicating detailed plans with our APs to allow this exchange to occur as seamlessly as possible this spring. That will be significant. Benefits of this exchange of materials at the elementary level, again already approved by the board in 2009-10, are many, but most significant with the new materials at the elementary level is that teachers and students have access to rich digital resources that promote hands-on learning with the Common Core state standards and the mathematical practices associated with those standards. Again, these online materials allow teachers to personalize and customize the resources, affording teachers an easier way to differentiate the materials to meet the needs of our kids. Just to provide you with a very quick snapshot of what the materials look like at the elementary level, included in every chapter is an essential question, our student vocab cards, and our Common Core content and practice standards. Though there have been many changes to the rollout plan for the Common Core state standards in English language arts, prompted by the decision and direction of the ADE, which I'll briefly highlight in the Springboard presentation later tonight, we wanted to take this opportunity and remind all stakeholders that there have not been changes to the rollout plans in math. Thus, we're continuing our plans to roll out the standards by domains at grades K-12 in SUSD, and those plans were reflected in the packet, the attachment that you received in your packet. We believe the instructional materials recommended by our secondary adoption committee and those that we'll be receiving as a result of the exchange in our materials will provide our students and teachers with quality resources to promote a deep conceptual understanding of those domains in math, K-12, across SUSD. Before I refer to the spreadsheets that reflect the budget implications of the recommendations and exchanges we're bringing to your attention tonight, I wanted to very briefly share an overview of our SUSD summer Professional Development Institute, which is a week-long menu of learning opportunities that focus on instruction. Coordinated by our SUSD curriculum team members, you'll notice that the bulk of the sessions are intended to promote a better understanding of the Common Core state standards or best practices in instruction, and some of the workshops are intended to allow our teachers to learn how to use our new materials discussed this evening. You may have noticed, if you got to read that for a detail, one of our teachers, the teacher that found the product in lieu of Geometry Sketchpad, has agreed to facilitate a workshop to teach their colleagues how to use GeoGebra. We're very grateful for the support of our curriculum specialists and other lead teachers in SUSD that have agreed to facilitate these learning opportunities for our teachers this summer. But those aren't the only learning opportunities we wanted to talk with you about this evening. In keeping with the recommendations of the Middle School Task Force, which asked us to continue to look for business partnerships or community partnerships that promote learning on the part of our teachers, we wanted to share 2 key community partnerships that provide unique learning opportunities for math teachers at the secondary level. We briefly mentioned Project Pathways, the partnership with ASU when discussing the materials for Algebra 2. That partnership allows teachers the opportunity to regularly discuss what is involved in understanding and teaching concepts in math. Participating teachers spend time unpacking what's involved in understanding an idea. They spend time evaluating students' thinking by interviewing students, and they reflect on the effectiveness of their instruction in promoting student learning. We're happy to share a very similar opportunity recently that we're engaging with Scottsdale Community College. You might remember that Susie Fishbein entered an agreement a couple years ago to work on a grant with Scottsdale Community College, and Kathy Nicholas kind of picked that up and been running with that this year too. But Scottsdale Community College has very recently been awarded a 5-year grant through which they will be recruiting middle school math teachers to participate. Teachers that join the project will have the opportunity to deepen their mathematical content knowledge and enhance their teaching practices in ways that ensure the development of math proficiency in our students. Though this grant originally was written to start small, very small in year 1, we anticipate extending the opportunity to all of our middle-level math teachers over the course of the next few years. The benefits to our students and teachers as a result of both of these opportunities are significant. Outside teachers that have already participated in both opportunities report that as a result of their learning and the changes in their instructional practices, their students are more likely to try difficult problems and more likely to understand the why in math. As a side note, both of those opportunities pay our teachers to participate, and the second opportunity, the middle level partnership with SEC, offers graduate credit for participating teachers actually through ASU. So the partnership and the grant is with SEC, but they get graduate credit through ASU through that partnership. As we begin to wrap up, we wanted to remind those that may not be familiar with our instructional materials processes that our textbooks and adopted materials have no impact on the M&O budget. Our adopted materials are paid for with the capital override dollars allocated for instructional materials, and those cannot be used to help with teachers' salaries or to reduce class size. We continue to be very fortunate in Scottsdale to have these monies allocated for the purposes of purchasing instructional materials, including our textbooks, software, supplemental instructional items, and even critters for our little critter farm to support instruction across Scottsdale. The spreadsheets that were included in the board packet provided detailed information about texts we've already purchased at the secondary level in previous years, the texts and list of supplementary materials we hope you'll approve based on the recommendations from our secondary adoption committee and the department chairs in Scottsdale, and what we project in savings based on the exchange of materials at grades K-8. You'll notice we elected to show those savings by comparing what the board originally approved with those products in the 2009 copyright materials, followed by the projected costs of the Common Core editions that we'll be exchanging for this spring. Aggregately, these math materials will account for 65% of the capital override instructional materials budget for the 2012 year. You'll also notice that the bundle prices for the new Common Core materials have an additional cost and have an initial cost and are more expensive in year 1 of this adoption cycle, but this exchange in materials at grades K-8 saves us just over $450,000 over the course of this 5-year agreement with Glencoe McGraw-Hill because there are limited residual costs. And this is really important because this saving allows us to allocate a few more dollars maybe towards our support courses in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, and the resources we provide to those teachers, because we promised them if we did away with basics courses, we would provide them with the very best resources to support their instruction in those courses. And from my chair, I think that might be one of the most important investments we make to support students learning at this time in secondary math. Tonight, this presentation is noted as an informational item on your agendas, so I'd be happy to entertain questions you might have about this to allow you to be more comfortable voting next time. And we will provide a much more detailed spreadsheet along with that consent agenda item to include the supplementary resources for the support courses before the May meeting, prior to our next meeting. That's it. Do you have any questions?
Thank you so much for that wonderfully detailed report. No, it really provides a lot of information.
Well, as I told Dr. Peterson, this is one of those presentations where we believe we are putting a bow on a lot of questions that have been posed over the course of the last 2 years in math.
Any discussion? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, thank you, Dr. Benson, and hello to your mother at home.
Do we need a 5-minute break before we go into the action items? Are we're okay? All right.
Can I ask a question about the last item? Do we want to put that on the consent agenda for next time? The text?
I think that was the plan.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Okay, so our action items: approval of proposed 2013-14 and 14-15 school year calendars.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Dr. Forlis is going to present a status of and a recommendation for the calendars for the next several years. I think what's important to note is we are following the template that we've been asked to follow. Also, we've had multiple school districts call us and ask us for our calendars because they actually want to set their calendars based on our calendars. So I think that's a good thing, that people are following Scottsdale, we're not following them.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson and Sandra. It is my pleasure to bring to you a proposal to approve the school calendars for the 2013-14 and 14-15 school years. It's important to set the context for why we're bringing this proposal to you for the next 2 school year calendars. After administration reviewed the templates of the 2013-14 and 2014-15 school year calendars, as presented by the calendar committee and approved as a draft during the December 19th, 2006 governing board meeting, administration is recommending modifications to the template for the 2013-14 and 2014-15 calendars in order to do 3 things. The first thing is we need to make sure that we closely balance our semesters. So you will see in the 13-14 and 14-15 school year that semester 1 has 88 days and semester 2 has 92 days. And the color copies of the calendars that I gave you at the podium, I included the 2012-13 calendar so that you can refer to, because that's a calendar that you've already voted on. You will also notice that our second goal was to maximize instructional time prior to state and national assessments and to finish the school years before Memorial Day. So as we take a look at the proposed 2013-14 calendar, you will see that we begin school on August 7th, and our last day of school is on May 23rd. We're honoring our fall break as we have become accustomed to in our school district. The same holds true with the 2014-15 calendar, beginning school on August 6th, completing the school year before Memorial Day on May 22nd, and honoring our fall break the week of October 13th. These proposed calendars have a direct benefit to students to maximize instructional time prior to state and national assessments, balance our semesters, and identify parent-teacher conferences for grades kindergarten through 8th grade. What questions can I answer?
Questions from the board?
Thank you very much. Thank you for presenting this. Yay.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we
I
got
heard
to
that was
talk
one of
about
your
it
goals.
again. Yes,
was to put a bow on
Eric
this.
and I wanted to squeeze this in a couple of more times.
Yeah, lots of
before
bows
December.
tonight.
Yep. Thank you. I want to make sure with these, have we paid respect to all the holidays, all the things that are important
We
to
took
our.
a look at the high absenteeism days for teachers and for students, and so you will notice one of those days occurs on September 5th, 6th, and September 25th in the respective years, so that day will be a district recess.
Okay.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
oh, that's all.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
it's Rosh, it's Yom Kippur, correct? Well, it's a district recess that day, yeah.
September, one year it's the 5th, and one year it's, let me look at, I gave you
That's correct.
You will notice on, for the 2013-14 school year, we have a district recess on September 5th. That's a high absentee day for students and for our employees. And then you will also notice on the 2014-15 school year, September 25th is also a district recess on that high absentee day.
Okay, thank you very much. I also, I know we've talked about this before. I do know this is expensive. I hope we are indeed working on the first day for teachers versus the first day of school, as well as the last day for teachers versus the last day of school. Maybe that can, hopefully, budget permitting, adjust at some point, because I think that's why, in fairness, we're collecting books before, 2 weeks before school is out, because our last day is everybody's last day. So is this a work in progress?
The two calendars before you, the 2013-14 and 14-15 calendar, have accommodated 2 days for teachers to return before students return to school. But then you will see also on the calendar that the first day for new teachers and returning teachers is to be determined, and that goes through the meet and confer process based on budget availability.
And Madam President, Board Member Peterson, that's also what we're going to be doing as some of our recommendations for the 15% M&O override, so that we can provide some additional professional development days for our teachers to be able to be here and being able to utilize their skills.
And then I'm seeing on here, and I apologize if this has been on the calendar before and I've not noticed it, elementary trimester?
So
Are we
one of
broken
the
into threes now?
forecasts, when Dr. McNeil was speaking of conferencing and benchmarking, what you will see that is new on the 2013-14 calendar that does not impact instructional days or days off of school, but they are trimesters. And so one of the, knowing that we're moving in a standards-based instructional environment, our K through 5 elementary principals met with Dr. Sitton and Dr. McNeil, and they have come to consensus that they will be reporting student grades in a trimester fashion versus quarterly. So that just indicates where the trimesters end within the school year versus typically we have, so maintaining our status quo for middle schools and high schools with quarters, elementary will have trimesters.
But it begins next year, yes?
Beginning next year, the
Okay.
2012-13 calendar that was already approved.
Okay, all right, so they'll get some sort of report card or feedback at the trimester, and then that's when. Next, no,
That's not a test. Yes, they will have report cards at the end of a trimester. We currently have schools right now, our standard-based report card schools are already operating on trimesters, so that has been going on for the last 3 years.
Is
Wow,
this
time
a,
flies.
is it a report card though, or like a continuum, where they're on the
No,
continuum?
it's a standard-based report card, so there's a reporting period. So at the end of our schools that are currently on trimesters, at the end of every trimester, parents receive a report card of every standard and how their child are progressing on every standard. And
All
that's
right.
done in a trimester fashion because the gathering of all of the data and the reporting is more cumbersome, so it's a teacher workload issue.
Okay, and then from an early release point of view, then this also gives us a little bit of relief, early release-wise, since it's on a trimester, so we're only doing it twice a year versus 3 times a year? Am I logically thinking?
Yes, we're going from quarters to trimesters.
Right, so we used to
At
do
the
parent
elementary.
conferences 3 times a year, so now they would only be twice.
Well, we
a
only
year.
did them twice before. We did them after after the first quarter and after the third quarter.
Okay, all right, so that
And you-
stays the same.
Yes.
And the
Okay.
parent-teacher conferences, we used to do early release days for 3 days. At the elementary, we have reduced that to 2.
Okay, okay, and then we still have the professional development early release days.
The 7 days on the 2012-13 calendar, as well as the 13-14 and the 14-15. So it's following the same format.
But we're trying to, the half days that the kids are in school, make those more impactful, so we're not having 10-minute classes.
Exactly. A conversation we had in the teaching and learning team today is talking about a 6 through 12 curriculum for the ECAP process. So what is it that we would want our kids to know, understand, and be able to do associated with the ECAP process beginning in 6th grade? So and that we would deliver that curriculum on the 7 early release days while the kids are in school, so that we know that we're getting the ECAPs done and that kids have access to Naviance. They're logging into Naviance, they're having career conversations starting early in 6th grade, and then have a consistent curriculum 6-12. So we've raised the level of awareness within our team, all thumbs up on it, so now we're gonna go get principals to champion that.
All right, wow, sounds great, thank you.
Mrs. Kirby?
Thank you. I just wanted to share that I personally recently experienced, and I thought, gosh, this is a great idea. Why don't I bring this to the school district? So I'm bringing it. On the high absentee days, so like the Friday before spring break starts and the Wednesday before Thanksgiving weekend, if we could consider taking a look at, like, for example, field day may not be offered in all schools, but it is in most, and it's usually during the school hours. And so strategically, we could require that field day be the Friday before spring break. And so you're taking something that takes away from instructional time already, you're keeping it instructional time. It's kind of going back to the old PTO, putting my PTO president hat on, get the kids to want to come there, and they'll convince the parents to take them. So that's just something that if we could explore that with our principals.
Those are the days kids want to be there.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great feedback.
Dr. Meyer?
So, on these early release days, and maybe you said it, going to have stuff for our kids to do on those days?
On the early release days, when we have parent-teacher conferences, as well as the 7 early release days for professional development, at the elementary level, we're working with community schools to make sure that they're providing enrichment opportunities for kids who choose to stay on the campus. Some kids are going to still go home, go to an orthodontist appointment, whatever. Others may want to stay and do robotics or guitar.
Do they pay?
It will be free. This is, yes,
Good.
because it's during the day.
And then, so at the middle school, what are we going to do? Did you already say this, and I wasn't paying
No,
attention?
no, you didn't mention this at all. Our current plan is to focus on our elementary schools and then see where the need is for our middle school students to find out what we need to be doing to support them on the early release days.
But what was the Naviance stuff about? So
Oh,
why aren't
that
we-
was, okay, so.
Why aren't we doing that on those, like, the counselors aren't meeting with parents on those parent-teacher conferences?
Actually, we're going to do it a little in a way that is a far larger scale. One of the things that we need to be thinking about is college and career planning is not just the job of the counselor, it's the job of the school. So we've got to figure out how do we all become a part of that. So on the early release days, when kids are in school, when they have the shortened bell schedule, that they would be completing the tasks associated with the ECAP process. So starting off with a career interest inventory in 6th grade. What are you interested in? What do you like to do? Learning to set goals and so on. So that would be part of the 6th grade curriculum that we would teach while they're in school on the early release days. So it's not what we would be teaching them after the bell rings. So it's during the school day. And that would be spread across teachers. Could be the days when schools are having job fairs where they're bringing in the community members to talk about what does it mean to be a biomedical engineer? What's the career path for somebody who wants to become a fill in the blank? So we have a great model that we're looking at. Coronado High School did a nice job of doing this on a smaller scale. They did it twice this year and last year during early release days. They had great success, and so we're looking at that as an exemplar that we would like to be able to follow across our middle schools and high schools. Did that get to your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just hoping that we look at those days as not, in the future, as not early release days, but days when we're providing something that's, one time, and whether, pertinent to that grade level, and whether it's enrichment or we use our computer labs as an online kind of, there's tons of ideas that I'm sure people could come up with to use those days as additional days for learning, because for a lot of parents, and now, you know, I don't know how many we have on here, but we have a lot of early release days. They're tough days, and it would, you know, and our buses then would, if parents want to come and get their kid, great, but our buses would leave on a regular bus schedule and all those things, and we'd have some field day or career counseling or tutoring, something.
Right.
And our, you know, I mean, it's K-8 early release, so on our high school counselors, but eventually they're going to need to know those kids and work with those kids. So how do we use those days? So.
That's on our radar. Thank you.
No, thank you.
To that point, is there some way we might even be able to coordinate with some of the colleges that come and do visits and ask them to come on those days, so that they don't take students out of their classes in order to make their pitches?
Yes, that was part of the Coronado models, that Coronado invited schools to come in, and they did the college fair for kids to be able to gain exposure to what do colleges have to offer. So that would be yet another opportunity, but our goal is to push that down into middle school as well. Don't wait till they get to high school to start showcasing colleges. Let's start those conversations beginning in our middle schools.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Okay, if we could, and again, I got off topic. If we could have a motion to approve the proposed 2013-14 and 14-15 school year calendar. I'll make that motion. Did I say 12-13?
Can I just ask
14?
Right. Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
Because this is our first time looking at this calendar, right? And I'm assuming parents want this information, is why I believe David, you had referenced that. We're sure we want to, remember last time when we approved it with one read? And
We're sure. This follows the template, which is what we've been asked to do.
Okay.
And so we feel comfortable with that recommendation.
And it follows the template that you just approved for the 2012-13 school year as well. That's why I
Okay.
included the 12-13 on top, so you could see they're very similar.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to call that out before we, you know, we've been down that path.
Right, right.
Right, so you need a proposal. So I motion that.
We have a motion.
Oh, I'll second it, I'm sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh. Okay. B is approval of innovative marketing and advertising.
Michelle Marshall is going to present our latest proposal as we move forward.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson and Sandra, I'm presenting something a little different than what I usually present to you tonight. We have a proposal, a recommendation that would allow us to maximize our advertising dollars. We are seeking your approval tonight of process for barter and trade for advertising services. This would allow us to maximize our resources rather than paying out of pocket for all of our advertising. I've given you one example, which would be that we offer to exchange services with a radio station, to exchange in-kind $5,000 worth of advertising on the radio station for the district, in exchange for the radio station putting their ads on our buses in the same amount of value. Obvious advantage is both parties are able to meet their advertising objectives without, while minimizing the amount of money that changes hands. This tool will open up opportunities for us to grow our brand and potentially save us a significant amount of money. We have put this idea through several departments, including checking with Sherry Salaya, our CFO, with Mike Romanoff, our Director of Purchasing, myself, and also Sherry reached out to our auditors and asked for their advice, and which included some of the things that I'm going to speak to you now about, which is having a process in place, and they also said check with legal, so I said, okay. Some guidelines that we would have in place to make sure that we're on the right track is we would limit this barter and trade to just advertising services only. We wouldn't seek to do that with any other services or products. We would require that we enter into a contract for each transaction. The contract would have to be based upon preset pricing to establish the value of the trade in advance. Each party would agree what services would be exchanged, and we would seek to have the contract be completed by the end of each fiscal year so that we're not carrying over past the fiscal year. At the end, we would cash out if there was any small difference in value, so that we were done with the contract for that year. We would seek to have as even a trade as possible so that that cash out would never be large. And one way we came up with to make sure that doesn't get out of hand is to implement a process to track and reconcile monthly where we are in the contract, having communications check in with the advertiser, and okay, we're here in month 3. We said we were going to exchange these services. Where are we? Why haven't you put your ads on our buses? We don't want to wind up with a big difference in the trade at the end of the year. Communications will present a monthly report to our CFO, Sherry Slaya, for her review, and then we would also give a year-end report to the board so that you know where we were with the process. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Mrs. Kirby?
Thank you. And will we still have to go through the RFP process for the barters?
That is a great question, and thank you for reminding me that your next action item after you decide whether to approve the barter trade for advertising is an action item to approve issuance of an RFP for what we called multimedia services. That approval would include barter and trade services. It's not just limited to that, but it would also include us allowing us to do that. Did I not answer? Sorry.
Probably did, but will we go through an RFP for all barter and trade services?
Yes, we
Okay,
will.
thank
Sorry.
you.
The only time we would not have to is if the value for the entire year for that one entity would be less than $5,000. But we expect it to be valued more than $5,000.
Dr. Meyer?
So, limited to marketing and advertising services only. So that's all we're willing to barter and trade, but we can take anything in exchange?
Actually, when we had the discussion, we talked about just trading advertising services. I'll ask Carla, am I stating that correctly? You wanna?
So, okay. Why was that?
Why aren't we taking other services?
So if, let's say, our pizza vendor wants to advertise on our, and I'm assuming all these things have to meet our standards that we set for advertising as appropriate for our kids.
Right.
So I don't know that pizza meets that standard, but let's say it did. Why would we not want to advertise our pizza vendor on the side of our buses in lieu of free pizza for our cafeterias?
Do you want to talk about that? So you're saying, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. We would have the pizza advertiser advertise on our bus in exchange for us getting free pizza?
That's a barter, yes.
No.
So let's say,
Right.
yeah, so we have bus space, right? We want
Right.
people to advertise, and if it meets our advertising policy that we've set as a district, why would we restrict it to just advertisers? Why wouldn't we want, if we can get free vehicles for the car that we need
Right.
and advertise an auto dealership, why wouldn't we do that?
Well, I'll tell you from a legal perspective, I'd prefer us to just dip a toe in this and not open it up to everything, because the main concern I had when this idea was brought to me is how do we control that we are trading pretty evenly and we're getting the same value for what we're exchanging. And so I'd like to go cautiously and see how this goes as your lawyer, but we could certainly explore that possibility in the future. Did you have something to add?
I agree.
Okay.
Initially, at least.
So,
Let's see how it works.
So, okay. So then you'll have to describe to me, so we're only doing this for advertising elsewhere? So, for instance, radio advertising for bus advertising, or newspaper advertising for bus advertising, or online advertising for bus advertising?
Right. Because
And, okay.
Because the only place that we've been authorized to advertise at this time, Dr. Meyer, is on our buses.
Right. Okay. Well, I'd be interested in seeing if other, I mean, I don't know, do we know that people are interested in doing this trade?
Madam President, Board Member Meyer, yes, we have had people inquire. And actually that's been going on for a while, so we thought we would just broach the subject. We think it's a great opportunity.
I'm ready to expand it when you are.
Okay, we'll come back to you with a report.
Mrs. Peterson?
Thank you. I'm with Dr. Meyer. I mean, I think this has exciting potential, but I also have to say I totally understand where Marshall's. This could spin out of control really quickly. So, thank you for kind of keeping an eye on it. Well, I mean, could be some question marks about, you know, advertisements, et cetera. I just wanted to thank you. I mean, I think this is a great idea. My only question, is there a reason why we have to, this is a first read and we're approving tonight? There's some sense of urgency with it?
I think there is a sense of urgency from communications, but this also is not a request for a policy to be put in place. This is a request that the board approve us using this process for trading services. When we checked with the auditors, one of the things they said is you might want to run it by your board, run it by your legal department. And so, again, in an abundance of caution, I'm not sure we want to go with policy with a capital P at this point. But we do want you to be aware of it and approve us using this process for trading services.
And in general terms, when we have a first read and then the second meeting it's approval, it's not always policy. It could be any kind of issue, so.
True.
I guess that's what I'm just curious, why must this be tonight? You know what I mean? Why wouldn't we? Are you on a deadline or?
Madam President, Board Member Peterson, one of the things we would like to do with advertising is our SOL, Scottsdale Online Learning, and we think the best way to get the message out for them is through television, which is quite expensive. We have met with several television stations, and they have kind of said potentially they would be interested in doing something like this. So we might be able to get our message out quicker with some of the more expensive mediums if we had this avenue that we could use as a way of exchanging as opposed to putting out the dollars.
All right. Okay.
Mrs. Kirby?
Are we in the state blazing the trail with respect? Okay, so I appreciate your caution, and I think it's I know it's very exciting, and I thinking out of the box, very creative, very good, and I want to go too, but if there's no model out there to follow, we are the model. We should be careful. So.
Mr. Brown?
Earlier I was chatting and I asked the question, so what will we be advertising on the radio or on TV? Well, e-learning certainly comes to mind. SOL certainly comes to mind. Some of our many programs here at Scottsdale Unified School District come to mind. Having the ability to advertise to potentially increase enrollment, I think, is the greatest thing out there, and that's truly what we would be targeting, is increasing enrollment in some way, shape, or form. So for me, I'm very excited, and more power to you.
Thank you. So do I hear that we're ready to talk about this evening? Is everybody comfortable with? Okay. Then I will make a motion that to recommend that the governing board approve the district's use of barter and trade as an innovative tool for marketing and advertising as described by Mrs. Marshall tonight.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that'll be 5-0.
Thank
That
you.
motion passes. Okay, and next, approval of issuance of request for proposal for multimedia advertising. Zelaya?
Madam President, Sherry Salaya, and is just going to, she presented the board item, and along with Ms. Marshall, and our simple recommendation is to approve an issuance of an RFP so that we can move forward with the practice that we're going to try to implement.
Go hand in hand, really. I'll make the motion that the governing board approve the issuance of an RFP for multimedia advertising.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Middle School Visioning and Task Force.
Madam President, I am very happy and proud to have Dr. Melissa Sackos come up. She has actually said that in a short amount of time, she's done 3 years worth of work. So she is going to give you the final presentation of all the work. It's truly a capstone project, and we're pretty excited for the potential of where we're going to be moving to.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson and Sandra, yes, I am very pleased to be here tonight in order to capture in a nutshell all of the work and all the progress we have made in the last 9 months, and really begin to celebrate excellence in action for our middle schools. As I shared with you in the last two presentations, the middle school task force made some recommendations, and based on funding, we had to tier our recommendations out, beginning with 2012-13 and then moving on to 2013-14. And again, those recommendations being the PBIS, the pre-AP curriculum and English language arts, our alignment in our elective courses to the gifted program standards, and of course moving to our house concept that'll allow for interdisciplinary teams, common planning time with specified criteria, and naturally active communication time, which some may know formally as advisory. The two in green there represent those that will that have a cost associated with it. Moving on to the next slide, the fiscal impact here for the pre-AP curriculum and English language arts. You are going to hear in a presentation after this one specific to the adoption of our springboard. So for the purposes of this presentation, we utilize those numbers in which, beginning with year 1, 2011-12, utilizing funding to begin our training this summer. And naturally with our alternative funding sources not impacting M&O. Our house structure that we are looking at for the 13-14 school year will have a fiscal impact of $500,000 and approximate 11.6 FTE. And as we continue with our tiered approach to rolling out the interdisciplinary teams and our house concept, there will be a need for additional professional development days, so you also see their fiscal impact. The latter two of those three, we will need to seek out alternative funding sources and the success of the 15% maintenance and operation override. Just at a glance, again, 2012-13, you can see in black there what will be rolling out in all of our campuses. The red in terms of the houses and the interdisciplinary teams and our 6-8 grade configurations are at select campuses, and the naturally 2013-14 will be implementing all of the task force recommendations, but also please note it is now our recommendation to ensure 6-8 grade configuration, including Mojave and Supai, as our facilities will be ready, and we'll be very excited to get our students, our 6th graders, into our middle level campuses. I'm just going to glance through this. You can see that there is a lot of professional development, and one slide that you saw from Dr. Benson represents the stellar work of all of our departments in terms of what we have offered for our staff this summer directly aligned to many of the initiatives within the middle level task force. Therefore, not recommending those additional days this year for middle level staff because we've been able to embed that in throughout the summer for professional development opportunities. With that, I come to you tonight to approve the middle level philosophy and our middle school organizational structure with our designated rollout plan that includes use of alternative funding for our English language arts specific to pre-AP curriculum, and moving forward to the 2012-13 school year, our house concept and our active communication time and those additional professional development days once we secure alternative funding, including the 15% maintenance and override. With that, are there any questions or comments?
Mrs. Peterson?
I actually just wanted to thank you. This has really been a long 3 years, and thank you. You've been so great and so responsive and receptive to us, really. So thank you. This has been a lot of hard work, and it really shows.
And I meant to thank the board in the beginning for the heightened attention and awareness we've brought to our middle level, middle level schools, because really, while it was tough at times, I can really see how this is going to impact our students in a very positive way. So I'm very excited for next year.
It is exciting, actually, and thank you really for everything. This has been a great journey, very productive for all of us, so thank you.
Mr. Brown?
I've already experienced benefits from these programs, and I'm just very excited also, and thank you for all your hard work, and this was the shortest 3 years of my life. Thank you.
It was probably the longest for you.
It actually went by very fast.
I'll bet it
very
did.
fast.
Time flies when you're having fun. Yes. Mrs. Kirby?
I also want to thank you and thank you for taking our feedback in the spirit in which it was intended. We wouldn't have challenged you if we didn't think you could do it, and you did it. And think you're going to impact 2 more years worth of kids than we would have otherwise. So kudos.
Thank you.
Great.
All right. Make the motion quick. I move that the governing board approve the middle level philosophy and middle level structure and rollout plan that includes everything that's listed on the agenda as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's 5-0. Wow, and a half hour to spare. Okay. And next on the agenda, approve the designation of sole source for Springboard.
Again, Madam President, Dr. Benson's presentation is a springboard off of Dr. Sakos's presentation, because you've just approved us moving in this direction, and in order to do that, we now need to be able to acquire the materials.
That was clever, Dr. Peterson. Good evening again, Madam President and governing board members this evening. As Dr. Sakos has continued to highlight in our middle school task force presentations and recommendations, one of the recommendations that came from the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Subcommittee indicated that we should continue to try to find materials that would support the transition to the Common Core in English language arts, especially at the middle grades. And so tonight, we're going to briefly highlight in one slide a few of the changes in the expectations with the new Common Core standards in English language arts. Then we're going to very briefly clarify the changes to the timeline in teaching these standards recently proposed by the ADE. Then we're going to justify why we can consider Springboard a sole source provider, and explain why we believe it one of the most important resources or tools we can adopt to allow our kids and students to be and teachers to be successful at transitioning to the Common Core standards at grades 6 through 8. And what might be considered an elevator speech to explain what the change in the Common Core standards at English language arts looks like. Very briefly, The Common Core state standards require that students read and write in much more analytical ways. In the words of David Coleman, the Common Core state standards require students to read like a detective and write like a conscientious reporter. Given the change in these expectations, we've sent our English language arts curriculum specialists and other lead teachers to AZ Reads, conferences put on by our local ADE, to make sure that we are fully understanding the changes in content and the changes in instruction required of the Common Core state standards. And our professional development plans in Scottsdale continue to involve learning opportunities for all of our teachers to understand the standards, and we've been mindful to ensure our rollout plans are consistent with the expectations and timelines proposed by the ADE, which has been interesting because, as some of you are aware, that timeline was accelerated very recently. In February, the ADE modified the timeline. Districts across our state are expected to implement the framework of the Common Core state standards. These modifications included that at grades K through 3, and grades 8 and 9, we are expected to be fully implementing the Common Core state standards next year. That was a change. February that came out. So as a result, many districts, including Scottsdale, have been reviewing our rollout plans for the Common Core state standards. And while we did that, our leadership team members, after meeting with principals and lead teachers, we have fully agreed to implement the Common Core state standards in all grades, K-12 next year for the 2012-13 school year. While other districts surrounding us have also jumped on board and intend to fully implement the Common Core state standards next year to allow our kids to be more successful in making this transition. In Scottsdale, we believe that in order for that to truly happen, our teachers need time and support and additional opportunities to learn about those standards, and they need to have access to high-quality resources to teach those standards. Springboard is just one resource available for districts to purchase to address the rigor expected within the Common Core state standards. It is a sole source provider with an instructional framework integrated with both content and teaching standards. It is the official pre-AP program from the College Board, aligned with the Common Core state standards and the framework of the new PARC assessment embedded within it, and that's key. It is intended, we believe most important, to provide a pathway of instruction to allow for rigorous and engaging curriculum for all middle level kids. Benefits to students are many, but in a nutshell, this resource allows our teachers and students access to culturally relevant and engaging materials that promote high levels of thinking, and a consumable student edition that allows our kids to continuously interact with the text, serving as a record of their students' progress throughout the course. One of the key reasons behind the success of the Springboard program, and I apologize, this one doesn't pop and it doesn't get big enough even if it does pop, but we've been using this flyer to advertise and begin the communication system with our teachers about what Springboard really is, and embedded within that, you probably noticed in your packet, is the language pending board approval for from this evening's governing board action. But one of the key reasons behind the success of the Springboard program includes that College Board provides multi-year professional development and support to our teachers. All teachers of Springboard are expected to complete an initial 3-day training to understand the methodology and content of the Springboard program. Pending your approval this evening, we're prepared to confirm 3 different opportunities for grades 6 through 8 English language arts teachers across Scottsdale to attend this professional development this summer. Dr. Sakos alluded to that training in her presentation just prior to this one this evening. And she included in her presentation the budgets that would be used to pay for our teachers to attend this training. The budget information reflected on the slide before us right now shows the cost of the instructional materials and the professional development for grades 6 through 8 for next year. And as we move forward, the projected costs at grades 6 through 9 over the course of the next 2 years. Again, it's very important when we talk budgets that we clarify the budgets proposed to purchase these materials include our Title I dollars, those allocated for Race to the Top purposes and the materials we can use for Race to the Top purposes, and DSEG dollars, not M&O dollars. Supplemental pay for teachers to attend the professional development is not included on this slide because it was previously indicated in Dr. Sakos' slide. But that supplemental pay, again, not coming out of M&O, is intended to come from Title IIA, a teacher quality grant, and from Title I dollars intended for professional development opportunities from our teachers. Tonight, this agenda item is an action item. Thus, we're asking the board to approve the proposal to adopt Springboard materials at grades 6 through 8 for English language arts teachers and students to use for the 2012-13 school year. Given that Springboard is a sole source provider, we're required to bring this program to your attention each year for your approval and continued support. So your vote tonight is to approve the materials and professional development for use at grades 6 through 8 at all campuses across SUSD for the 2012-13 school year. And that includes our 6th grades to elementaries too, because we believe if we're going to afford equitable learning opportunities for all our kids, we got to be including it at that those grade levels as well. And Dr. McNeil and the elementary principals voted to do that as well. At this time, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to entertain them about this recommendation to approve these materials.
Oops. Did you wake up? Any questions? Okay, can I have a motion? Anybody?
I move that the governing board approve the designation of sole source to the vendor listed for Springboard for an amount not to exceed $250,000.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any discussion? Sorry. It seems like we already discussed. That's why.
Yes,
That's why
exactly.
I skip over that. I'm sorry.
Aye.
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 Aye. That's 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any items for future action? I have the request for the testing information from Mrs. Kirby. Anything else? Okay, and governing board reports. Mrs. Peterson.
I just have a quick one. I had the great pleasure of going to the Scottsdale Honors Cotillion Ball, and it basically celebrates all of our high school girls here in Scottsdale, our senior girls, as well as Notre Dame. But nevertheless, it's a very big celebration. It's about 48 girls that are chosen. The really great thing about it, their average GPA is like a 4.3. I mean, it's crazy. Oh yeah, these girls are accomplished. They're all on student council. They're all honor society. They're all on the soccer team. They're all on POM. I mean, they're incredible. But the nice thing, the top awards went to, because as I said, Notre Dame is also in this group, went to Scottsdale girls. Taylor Lynn from Desert Mountain won a scholarship for academics. She's an IB student from Desert Mountain 5.0. Perfect. Oh, I know. The other two girls that received basically Spirit Awards, one from Arcadia, Andrea Wasserman, and then another one from Saguaro, Olivia Brancati, which, Jeff, you and Andy, you know her. She is, I believe she's student council president. Yes, she's on the student advisory board. So, yes, very exciting. Our kids out in the community doing great things.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank
It
you
is
for
wonderful,
that.
yes.
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
I just wanted to thank the Desert Mountain Learning Community for inviting me to their Fine Arts Honors Show, and also to Cochise Elementary. They had a fine art show too, and it was absolutely wonderful. It helps us remember why we're all here. Dates of upcoming meetings: Friday, we have a student appeal at 10 o'clock. I believe there's only one. Also Tuesday, May 8th at 4 o'clock, a study. Oh, and an executive session after the student appeal. Oh, thank you for reminding me. Tuesday, May 8th, 4 o'clock, a study session, 5 o'clock, the regular governing board meeting. Tuesday, June 5th, 4 o'clock, study session, 5 o'clock, regular governing board meeting. And entertain motion for adjournment.
So moved.
It's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. And thanks for all of you who hung in there till the last minute. We appreciate it. Bye.